I never thought my own daughter would look me in the eye and scream, "This isn't your family anymore." But Ashley did. She stood in my living room beside her husband Derek, with her arms crossed like she owned every wall, every window, every memory inside that house. The house my late husband Henry and I had paid for with aching backs, long nights, and 30 years of sacrifice. My grandson Noah stood frozen near the stairs, too scared to speak. Derek slid a stack of papers across the coffee table and told me it was time to make things easier. I looked at my daughter, then at the room where her father's picture still hung, and said quietly, "Then let me remind you whose name is on the deed." Before I tell you what happened next, please take a moment to like this story and subscribe if you believe a mother's love should never be mistaken for weakness. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if your own child tried to push you out of your home? Also let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I truly love reading your thoughts. The house on Maple Ridge Lane was never a mansion. It was a 2-story white house with blue shutters, a narrow front porch, and an old maple tree that leaned slightly toward the driveway, as if it had spent years listening to our family secrets. In the spring, tulips came up along the walkway. In the fall, that maple dropped leaves so thick Henry used to joke we could build a second house out of them. But to me, that house was everything. Henry Nichols and I bought it when we were both young enough to believe love could fix anything, and poor enough to know it would have to work hard. He was an electrician then, with calloused hands and a laugh that filled any room. I worked at the community library downtown, shelving books, helping children find stories, and stretching every paycheck until it nearly tore. We did not buy that house because it was fancy. We bought it because it had good bones. That was what Henry said the first time we walked through it. "Brooke," he told me, standing in the kitchen with sunlight falling across the worn linoleum floor, "this place has good bones." Just like us. Back then, the walls were yellowed from years of cigarette smoke. The upstairs bathroom had a faucet that screamed every time you turned it on. The back steps sagged so badly that I was afraid to carry groceries up them. But Henry saw what it could become. He saw Christmas mornings in the living room, summer dinners on the porch, birthday candles glowing in the dining room, and a little girl running down the hallway in her pajamas. I saw it too. So we signed the papers. For the first 10 years, almost every spare dollar went into that house. Henry rewired the basement himself after working 10-hour shifts. I painted bedrooms after Ashley went to sleep sometimes, with one hand on the roller and the other pressed against my aching back. We replaced the roof one tax refund at a time. We planted roses near the porch because my mother always said a house without flowers looked lonely. And when Ashley was born, that house stopped being just wood brick and mortgage payments. It became the place where I learned what it meant to be a mother. Ashley Parker was Ashley Nichols back then, of course. My only child. My bright-eyed, loud-laughing, stubborn little girl. She had Henry's smile and my temper, though neither of us admitted that part out loud. She used to run through the kitchen, with her socks sliding on the floor, calling Mom watch me before spinning in circles, until she fell into a heap of giggles. I watched her take her first steps in that living room. I sat beside her bed through ear infections and nightmares. I packed her school lunches on the same kitchen counter Derek would one day lean against as if he had a right to judge me. There were pencil marks on the pantry door where Henry measured Ashley's height every year on her birthday. 5 years old. After she left for college, I used to run my fingers over those pencil marks whenever the house felt too quiet. That was the thing about motherhood nobody warned me about. You spend years praying for your child to grow strong enough to leave, and when she finally does, the silence she leaves behind feels like punishment. Ashley went to college in Columbus. Henry and I were so proud we could hardly stand it. We had saved for years gone without vacations, clipped coupons, and drove old cars until they rattled like coffee cans full of screws. I took extra weekend shifts at the library. Henry did side jobs after work. If a neighbor needed a ceiling fan installed, or a fuse box looked at, Henry was there with his toolbox. Ashley never knew how many nights we sat at that kitchen table with bills spread out between us, whispering, so she would not hear. "She deserves a chance," Henry would say. And I would nod, even when I was scared. Because that was what parents did. We made the road smoother and pretended the stones had not cut our own feet. For a long time, Ashley seemed grateful. She called every Sunday evening. She came home for Thanksgiving and curled up beside me on the couch like she was still 12 years old. She brought laundry home in bags and asked Henry to check her car before she drove back. She hugged me too tightly when she left, and I would stand on the porch waving until her taillights disappeared. Then she met Derek Parker. At first, I wanted to like him. He was polite in the way some men are polite when they know they are being watched. He shook Henry's hand firmly. He brought me a bottle of wine, even though I had never cared much for wine. He complimented the house, but not in a warm way. More like he was assessing it. "Beautiful property," he said the first Christmas Ashley brought him home. "This area has really held its value." Henry's eyes flicked toward me just for a second. I remember that look now more clearly than ever. Back then, I brushed it aside. Derek worked in business consulting. Maybe that was just how people like him talked. Values, assets, opportunities. He wore pressed shirts even on Saturdays and checked his phone under the table when he thought no one noticed. Ashley changed slowly after she married him. Not all at once. That would have been easier to see. She called less. When she did call, she sounded rushed, distracted. If I asked too many questions, she sighed. If I mentioned something from her childhood, she said, "Mom, that was a long time ago." She stopped asking about the library, stopped asking whether I'd planted my tomatoes, stopped asking if her father's knee was bothering him when the weather turned. Henry noticed before I did. "She's pulling away," he said one evening. We were sitting on the porch, watching fireflies blink in the yard. Ashley had canceled Sunday dinner for the third week in a row. "She's newly married," I said. "They're building their own life." Henry was quiet for a while. Then he said, "Building your own life doesn't mean forgetting who helped lay the foundation." I did not answer because I did not want him to be right. When Henry got sick, the house became both shelter and battlefield. Cancer does not enter politely. It kicks the door open and rearranges everything. Suddenly, our calendar filled with appointments, medication scans, test results, and words no wife ever wants to hear. Henry grew thinner. His strong hands trembled. The man who had once carried lumber on his shoulder now needed help walking from the bedroom to the bathroom. Ashley came when she could at first. Then Derek's schedule became complicated. Then there were meetings, then trips, then excuses wrapped in soft voices. I never told Ashley how often Henry asked whether she had called. I never told her how many times I lied and said she'll call tomorrow. Near the end, Henry spent most afternoons in the recliner by the living room window. He liked to look at the maple tree. One evening, when the sky was turning orange behind the houses across the street, he reached for my hand. "Brooke," he said, his voice thin but steady, "promise me something." I leaned close. "Anything. Don't let anyone make you feel like a guest here." The word startled me. I tried to smile. "Henry, this is my home." His fingers tightened around mine. "Promise me. I promise." He closed his eyes for a moment, gathering strength. "And don't sign anything. Not for Ashley, not for Derek, not for anybody. If something feels wrong, call Charles Whitman. You hear me?" Charles was the attorney who had helped us update some papers after Henry's diagnosis. I had not paid much attention to the details then. My mind had been full of pill bottles and hospital parking lots, and the sound of Henry trying not to groan when pain moved through him. "Why are you saying this?" I asked. Henry looked toward the mantel where Ashley's graduation photo sat in a silver frame. Because grief makes people vulnerable, he whispered. And money makes some people unrecognizable. I wanted to argue. I wanted to say Ashley would never hurt me. I wanted to say Derek might be stiff and ambitious, but he was still family. I wanted to say our daughter remembered every birthday cake, every bedtime story, every sacrifice hidden under her feet like floorboards. But Henry looked so tired. So I only nodded. I promise, I said again. He died 11 days later. After the funeral, the house felt enormous. Every room held him and lacked him at the same time. His coffee mug stayed in the cabinet. His work boots sat in the garage. His reading glasses remained on the small table beside his chair, because moving them felt like admitting something I was not ready to accept. Ashley cried at the funeral. I remember holding her while she shook in my arms. For a moment, she was my little girl again, and I believed grief would bring us closer. But grief does not always soften people. Sometimes it reveals what has been hardening inside them for years. In the months after Henry passed, Ashley visited less than I expected. Derek always had reasons: work, weather, their son Noah's school schedule, church events, financial planning meetings. When they did visit, Derek walked through the house with that same measuring gaze. He noticed the new grocery store being built 2 miles away. He mentioned that older homes in my neighborhood were surprisingly marketable. He asked whether the mortgage was fully paid off. I told him it was. His eyebrows lifted. Good for you, he said. But it did not sound like praise. It sounded like calculation. Still, I pushed the thought away. I was lonely, and loneliness can make a woman excuse things she would recognize clearly in someone else's life. I told myself Derek was simply practical. I told myself Ashley was busy. I told myself families go through seasons. Then, one Sunday afternoon, Ashley called. Her voice was sweeter than it had been in months. Mom, she said, Derek and I have been talking. We don't like you being alone in that big house. I looked around the kitchen at the sunlight on the counter at Henry's empty chair. I manage fine, I said. I know you think you do, she replied gently. But you're getting older. And Noah misses you. We all do. Those words reached a place in me that had been aching for years. We all do. I closed my eyes and let myself believe her. Ashley continued. Maybe it's time we came home for a while, just to help. Just so you don't have to carry everything by yourself. I should have remembered Henry's warning right then. I should have heard his voice. Don't let anyone make you feel like a guest here. But I was a mother before I was a cautious woman. And when your child says she wants to come home, part of you opens the door before your mind has checked the lock. So I said yes. I said yes because I missed my daughter. I said yes because I wanted Noah's laughter in the hallway. I said yes because I thought maybe God was giving me a second chance at family. I did not know then that letting them move in would be the first step toward nearly losing everything Henry and I had spent our lives protecting. Ashley arrived on a Saturday morning with 2 cars, 1 rented moving van, and a smile so bright I almost forgot how long it had been since she had smiled at me that way. I was standing on the porch when they pulled into the driveway. The maple tree had just started turning gold at the edges, and the air smelled like cut grass and the first hint of fall. For the first time in months, the house did not feel quite so empty. Noah jumped out of the back seat before the engine had even stopped. Grandma Brooke. He was 15, tall and lanky, with sneakers too big for his feet, and hair that always looked like he had just run his hands through it. He crossed the yard in 3 long strides and wrapped his arms around me so tightly, I nearly lost my balance. Oh, I missed you, I whispered into his shoulder. I missed you too, he said. Mom said, we're really staying this time. Those words filled me with a warmth I had not felt since Henry died. Ashley stepped out next. She wore dark jeans, a cream sweater, and sunglasses pushed up into her hair. She looked polished, like she always did after marrying Derek, but there was something softer in her face that morning. "Hi, Mom," she said. I opened my arms. For a second, she hesitated. Then she hugged me. It was not the kind of hug she used to give me when she was young. It was shorter, more careful, as if affection had become something she had to remember how to do. But I took it anyway. A hungry heart will accept crumbs and call them a meal. Derek came around from the other side of the car, holding a bouquet of white lilies. "Brooke," he said warmly, "you look wonderful." He kissed my cheek, handed me the flowers, and glanced up at the house. "Still beautiful," he said. "This place has so much potential." I should have noticed the word potential. Not history, not warmth, not memories. Potential. But I was too busy looking at Ashley, too busy listening to Noah talk about school, too busy believing that maybe my family had found its way back to me. The first few days were almost lovely. Derek fixed the loose railing on the back steps without me asking. He replaced the porch light and tightened the cabinet handle under the sink. Ashley cooked dinner, the first night chicken with roasted vegetables, and insisted I sit down while she served me. "You've done enough for everyone else," she said. "Let us take care of you for once." I nearly cried right there at the table. Noah helped me bring boxes of old books down from the attic because he said he wanted to see what his mom had read as a kid. We found Ashley's old copy of Little Women with her name written inside the front cover in purple marker. I held it up and laughed. "You carried this book everywhere," I told her. Ashley smiled faintly. I remember. For a moment her face changed. She looked younger, less guarded, almost like my daughter again. That first week, I slept better than I had in months. I heard footsteps in the hallway. I heard dishes in the sink. I heard Noah laughing at videos on his phone. The house had noise again, and noise after grief can feel like mercy. But little things began to shift. At first, they were so small, I scolded myself for noticing. Ashley moved the coffee maker from the left side of the counter to the right. "It makes more sense here," she said. Then she rearranged the spice cabinet. "You had expired things in there, Mom." Then she folded Henry's old flannel blanket from the back of his recliner and placed it in the hall closet. "I just thought the living room looked cleaner without it." I stood in front of that closet after she walked away, staring at the folded blanket like it was Henry himself being tucked out of sight. I told myself she meant well. Then came the curtains. One afternoon, I returned from the grocery store and found Ashley standing in the living room with a measuring tape while Derek held fabric samples against the window. "What's all this?" I asked. Ashley turned with a bright, practiced smile. "Just freshening things up." I looked at the blue curtains I had sewn myself years ago. They were faded, yes, but Henry had loved them because he said they made the room feel like morning, even on rainy days. "I like these curtains," I said. Ashley's smile tightened. "Mom, they're old." Derek gave a small chuckle. "A little updating wouldn't hurt. Houses like this need to stay current. Houses like this." I set the grocery bags on the table slowly. "I'm not planning to sell it," I said. The room went quiet for half a breath. Then Derek smiled. "Of course not. I didn't mean anything by it." But his eyes moved toward Ashley, and hers moved away from mine. A few days later, the framed photographs on the mantel changed. Henry and me at our 25th anniversary dinner was moved to the side table. Ashley's family portrait took the center spot. Noah in a navy blazer, Ashley in a pale blue dress. Derek standing behind them with one hand on each of their shoulders, smiling like a man who owned everything in the frame. I stood there looking at it while Ashley came down the stairs. "Looks nice, doesn't it?" she asked. "It does?" I said carefully. "But where did you put the picture of your father?" "Oh, it's still there." She pointed to the side table. "I just thought this one should be more visible since we're all living here now. We're all living here now." Again, I swallowed the discomfort. Again, I chose peace. That was something I had done my whole life. Chosen peace. Smoothed the tablecloth. Lowered my voice. Let things pass because I believed love was worth more than being right. But peace without respect is not peace. It is surrender, wearing a gentle face. I did not understand that yet. The first person to say something plainly was Linda Harper. Linda had lived next door for 22 years. She was a retired school secretary with sharp eyes, silver curls, and a way of knowing things before anyone told her. She had brought casseroles after Henry died and sat with me through evenings when I could not bear the silence. One morning, she waved me over while I was getting the mail. "How's it going with the full house?" she asked. "It's nice," I said. "Different, but nice." Linda studied me over the top of her glasses. "Different good or different strange?" I gave a small laugh. "You always did ask questions like a principal. I worked for 3 of them. Learned from the best." I looked back at my house. Derek was standing near the driveway talking on his phone. He had one hand in his pocket and his eyes on the roofline. Linda lowered her voice. "He asked me something yesterday." "Derek," she nodded. "Wanted to know if I'd heard what the Millers got for their place." The Millers had sold their home 2 streets over the previous spring. I felt a small tightening in my stomach. Maybe he was just curious. Maybe Linda said. Then he asked whether I thought this neighborhood would go higher once that new shopping center breaks ground. I did not answer. Linda touched my arm gently. "Brooke, I'm not trying to stir anything, but keep your eyes open." I wanted to defend Ashley. I wanted to defend my own decision to let them come. Instead, I forced a smile and said, "I will." That evening, Derek brought home takeout from a nice Italian restaurant and made a show of setting the table. "Brooke deserves a break," he announced. Ashley smiled at him like he had done something noble. During dinner, Derek talked about the neighborhood. "There's a lot happening around here," he said, twirling pasta onto his fork. "New commercial development, better schools, younger families moving in." "It has always been a good neighborhood," I said. "Sure," he replied. "But now it's valuable." Henry's voice rose in my memory. "Money makes some people unrecognizable." I looked across the table at Ashley. She was cutting Noah's chicken, even though he was old enough to do it himself, avoiding my eyes. "Derek," I said, keeping my voice calm, "why are you so interested in what the house is worth?" His fork paused. Ashley looked up quickly. "Mom, what I asked, it's a fair question." Derek smiled, but this time the warmth did not reach his eyes. "I'm just thinking long term. That's all. A property like this is part of the family's future." "The family's future," I repeated. "Yes," Ashley said softly. "Isn't that what Dad would have wanted, for the house to help all of us?" The mention of Henry landed like a hand pressing on a bruise. I set my napkin beside my plate. "Your father wanted this house to be a home," I said. "Not a strategy." No one spoke for a moment. Then Noah cleared his throat and asked if anyone wanted more bread. I loved that boy for trying. After dinner, I washed the dishes alone, even though Ashley had promised I would not have to. Through the kitchen window, I saw Derek and Ashley standing on the back patio. Their voices were low, but their bodies were tense. Derek gestured toward the garage, then toward the upstairs windows. Ashley shook her head once sharply. When they came back inside, they stopped talking. That night, I lay awake in the bedroom Henry and I had shared for more than 30 years. His side of the bed was still empty. His photograph sat on the nightstand. I turned toward it in the dark. "Am I being foolish?" I whispered. The house creaked softly around me. No answer came, of course. But somewhere deep inside, beneath the loneliness and the hope and the ache of wanting my daughter back, a warning began to stir. Not loud, not yet, just enough to keep me awake. The first time Ashley called the house our home, I almost corrected her. Almost. We were standing in the kitchen on a Tuesday morning. I was pouring coffee into Henry's old blue mug, the one with a tiny chip near the handle, when Ashley came in with her phone pressed between her shoulder and ear. "Yes," she said into the phone, opening my refrigerator as if she had always owned it. "We're still settling into our home, but Derek thinks we can start the update soon." Our home. The words landed softly, but they did not feel soft. I looked at her over the rim of the mug. She did not notice. Or maybe she did and chose not to. After she hung up, I asked, "Who was that? Just a contractor?" "Derek knows," she said, taking out a carton of almond milk. "Nothing serious. A contractor for what." She gave me that smile she had started using more often, the one that looked gentle, but somehow made me feel childish. "Mom, don't worry. We're just exploring options. Options for my house." Her face tightened. "For the house. We all live here now." I wanted to say, "Living somewhere does not make it yours," but I had spent too many years swallowing hard truths for the sake of family harmony. So, I only nodded and carried my coffee into the living room, where Henry's recliner sat slightly angled toward the window. Even that chair had started to look out of place now. Ashley had bought new throw pillows. Derek had ordered a glass coffee table that I had not asked for. A gray rug covered the old hardwood floor Henry had refinished by hand, one summer sanding each plank until his knees swelled. The room looked cleaner, newer, more modern, but less mine. A few days later, Derek changed the locks. I came home from the pharmacy with a small white bag of blood pressure medication in my purse and found him kneeling at the front door with a toolbox open beside him. "What happened?" I asked. He looked over his shoulder. Old lock was sticking. It always sticks a little in cold weather. "That's exactly the problem," he said. "Unsafe. Anyone could force it." I looked at the shiny new deadbolt already installed above the handle. "You should have asked me first." Derek stood wiping his hands on a rag. "Brooke, it's just a lock. I'm trying to help." Ashley appeared behind him in the hallway. "Mom, please don't make this into something." "I'm not making it into anything," I said. "I just want to know if I still have a key to my own front door." The words came out sharper than I intended. Derek's jaw moved once, but he smiled. "Of course you do. I'll make you one. As soon as I get back to the hardware store." He said it casually, but 2 days passed before he handed me the new key. During those 2 days, I used the garage door code to get inside. On the second evening, the code did not work. Derek said the system had reset. "Technology," he said with a shrug. I stood outside in the cold for nearly 10 minutes before Noah heard me knocking and opened the door. "Grandma?" he said, his face full of concern. "Why didn't you come in?" I looked past him and saw Ashley standing at the bottom of the stairs. "I tried," I said. Ashley's eyes flicked toward Derek's office door. No one said anything else. That was how it happened. Not with one dramatic cruelty, but with 100 small humiliations, each one easy to explain away if you wanted to believe the people hurting you still loved you. Then came the bedroom. Ashley brought it up on a Sunday afternoon while I was folding towels in the laundry room. "Mom?" she said, leaning against the doorway Derek and I were talking. By then, I had learned to fear that sentence. She continued. The upstairs layout really doesn't make sense right now. I placed a towel on the stack. What do you mean? Well, you're in the primary bedroom and Derek and I are sharing the smaller room at the end of the hall. That was your old room. I know, but we're married adults. Derek works from home sometimes. We need more space. I stared at her. For a moment, I thought I had misunderstood. You want my bedroom? Ashley sighed. Mom, don't say it like that. How should I say it? We just think the back room would be easier for you. It's quieter, less light in the morning, and you don't need all that closet space. The towel in my hands twisted between my fingers. That room was mine and your father's for 31 years. Her expression softened, but only for a second. I know. But Dad is gone. The room went silent. Something inside me recoiled. Ashley must have realized how cruel it sounded because she quickly added, I didn't mean it that way. I just mean, life changes. Life changes. That was becoming her answer for everything. When I did not respond, she stepped closer. Mom, we're trying to make this work for everyone. You said you wanted us here, but you can't expect nothing to change. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. The girl I had rocked through fevers. The teenager whose prom dress I had hemmed by hand. The young woman I had held when she cried after her first heartbreak. And now, she was standing in front of me asking me to surrender the room where I had last held my husband's hand. I wanted to scream. Instead, I whispered, I need time. Ashley's mouth tightened. Fine. But she and Derek did not wait for my answer. 2 days later, I came home from Linda's house and found Noah carrying a box down the hall. What are you doing? I asked. He froze. Behind him, Derek stepped out of my bedroom holding Henry's bedside lamp. Just helping with the transition, Derek said. What transition? Ashley came from inside the room with an armful of my sweaters. Mom, please. We talked about this. No, I said, my voice trembling. You talked. I listened. Derek set the lamp down with exaggerated patience. Brooke, nobody is throwing your things away. We're simply reorganizing. I walked past him into the bedroom. The bedspread was stripped. Henry's photo was no longer on the nightstand. My jewelry box sat open on the dresser. The closet door was wide, half my clothes already removed. For a second, I could not breathe. It felt like walking into my own life and finding strangers packing it up. Where is Henry's picture? I asked. Ashley avoided my eyes. On the dresser in the back room. The back room, I repeated. Derek's voice cooled. You're making this much harder than it needs to be. Noah stood in the hallway, pale and miserable. I'm sorry, Grandma, he whispered. I turned to him immediately. This is not your fault. Ashley snapped Noah go downstairs. He hesitated. Now Derek said. Noah left, but not before I saw the anger in his eyes. Not at me. At them. That night, I slept in the small back bedroom for the first time. The room had once been used for sewing storage and guests, who stayed only a night or two. The window faced the neighbor's fence. The closet smelled faintly of cedar and old wrapping paper. Henry's picture sat on the dresser, but it looked wrong there. I sat on the edge of the bed and held the frame in my lap. I'm sorry, I whispered to him. The next morning, I found our wedding photo missing from the mantel. I searched the living room first, then the dining room, then the hallway table. Finally, I found it in a cardboard box in the garage wrapped in an old dish towel. Beside it were 3 more frames, Ashley's kindergarten picture, Henry holding newborn Noah, and a photo of the 3 of us at Lake Erie the summer before Ashley left for college. Memories packed like clutter. I carried the wedding photo back inside. Ashley saw me from the kitchen. "Mom," she said carefully, "we were just decluttering." "This is not clutter. No one said it was. You put my marriage in a box." Her face flushed. "That is not fair." "No," I said, holding the frame against my chest. "It isn't." For once, she had no answer. But Derek did. He stepped into the kitchen, buttoning the cuffs of his shirt. "Brooke, emotional attachment is understandable, but we can't live in a museum." A museum? That was what he called the home Henry and I had built. Something old, something preserved, something inconvenient to modern life. I looked at him and felt a coldness settle in my chest. Not fear, recognition. After that, Derek's control spread quietly through the house. He changed the Wi-Fi password and forgot to tell me until I asked why my tablet would not connect. He moved the utility bills to paperless statements because it was more efficient. He told the lawn service to come on Thursdays instead of Saturdays without asking me. He started answering the door when Linda came by, sometimes saying I was resting when I was wide awake in the next room. One afternoon, I heard him tell Ashley, "Your mother gets overwhelmed easily. We need to limit unnecessary visitors." Unnecessary visitors? Linda had brought me soup after Henry died. She had sat beside me at the funeral. She had held my hand when I could not stop shaking. But to Derek, she was unnecessary because she saw too much. Noah still found ways to come to me. He would knock softly on the back bedroom door and ask if I wanted tea. Sometimes he sat on the floor and told me about school, about his history teacher, about the girl he liked but was too shy to talk to. One evening, he looked around the little room and said, "You shouldn't be in here." I forced a smile. "It's just a room, sweetheart." "No, it's not." His voice cracked a little. Before I could answer, Ashley called from downstairs. "Noah." He stood quickly, guilt flashing across his face. "I'll come back later," he said. But later came less and less often. The final warning came on a rainy Thursday. Derek had been working at the dining room, table papers spread around his laptop. When his phone rang, he gathered most of them quickly and stepped into the kitchen. One sheet slid under the edge of the placemat, half hidden. I should not have looked. That is what I told myself as I stood there. But this was my dining room, my table, my house, and the words visible at the top of the page made my stomach tighten. Renovation loan estimate. Below that were handwritten notes, equity potential, transfer options, property value after updates, primary residence conversion. My hands went cold. I picked up the paper just as Derek came back into the room. His face changed, only for a second. Then he smiled. Looking for something, I held up the page. "What is this?" He crossed the room and took it from my hand with a little too much force. "Business notes. About my house. Our living situation affects financial planning," he said. "My house," I repeated. His smile disappeared. "Brooke, with all due respect, you don't understand how these things work anymore. The word anymore did the damage, not you don't understand. Anymore." As if age had erased my mind. As if grief had made me incompetent. As if the woman who had paid bills, raised a child, managed a household, cared for a dying husband, and kept that roof standing for decades, could no longer read a piece of paper. Ashley entered behind him. "What's going on?" "Your mother found some private financial notes," Derek said. I looked at her. "Ashley, why is he writing about transfer options?" She looked at Derek first. That told me everything. Then she said, "Mom, you're overreacting." I felt something inside me go very still. There it was again. Too emotional. Overreacting. Confused. Old. Words used like soft blankets to smother the truth. I looked from my daughter to my son-in-law, then toward the living room where Henry's recliner no longer had his blanket, where our wedding photo had nearly been erased, where every corner of my life was being renamed, rearranged, and quietly claimed. For the first time since they had moved in, I did not argue. I simply said, "I see." Derek relaxed, thinking he had won. Ashley looked relieved, thinking the moment had passed. But it had not passed. It had opened. That night, after the house went quiet, I took Henry's old metal document box from the top shelf of the closet in the back room. My hands shook as I set it on the bed. I had not opened it since the week after his funeral. The key was still taped beneath the bottom drawer of my jewelry box, exactly where Henry had always kept it. I unlocked the box and lifted the lid. Inside were tax records, insurance papers, bank statements, and a thick folder labeled "House Documents" in Henry's careful handwriting. I placed my palm over the folder and closed my eyes. For the first time in weeks, I heard my husband's warning not as a memory, but as a command. Don't sign anything. Not for Ashley, not for Derek, not for anybody. And in that small back bedroom they thought they had pushed me into, I finally understood. They had not moved me out of the way. They had moved me closer to the truth. The dinner was Ashley's idea. She announced it on a Wednesday morning while I was rinsing blueberries at the sink. Derek invited a few people over Friday night, she said, scrolling through her phone. Nothing huge, just some colleagues and a couple from church. I turned off the faucet. Invited them here? She looked up. Yes, Mom, here. There was a slight edge in her voice, as if my question itself was unreasonable. I didn't know we were hosting. Ashley sighed. We're not asking you to do anything. Derek and I will handle it. But by Friday afternoon, I was the one wiping counters, setting out serving dishes, and checking the oven. Not because Ashley forced me exactly, but because old habits are hard to break. When people came into my home, I wanted them fed. I wanted the table warm. I wanted the house to smell like something made with care. So I made Henry's favorite chicken casserole. It was simple, the kind of dish people used to bring to church potlucks in covered glass pans. Creamy sauce, tender chicken, buttered crumbs on top, a little thyme, because Henry always said it made the kitchen smell like Sunday. When Ashley came in and saw it cooling on the stove, her face fell. Oh, Mom. I froze. What? She glanced toward the dining room where Derek was arranging wine glasses. I thought we agreed Derek and I were handling dinner. You said I didn't have to do anything, I replied. You didn't say I couldn't. It's just... She lowered her voice. This is a little old-fashioned for tonight. Old-fashioned. The word stung more than it should have. It's homemade, I said. I know. And that's sweet. But Derek ordered charcuterie boards and salmon from that place downtown. His colleagues are used to a certain kind of dinner. A certain kind. I looked at the casserole, golden and bubbling around the edges, and suddenly I felt foolish. Like a woman who had shown up to a formal event wearing an apron. Ashley must have seen my face because she softened slightly. We can put it out too, she said. Maybe as a side. A side. Henry's favorite meal had become a side in his own house. By 6:30, the guests began arriving. Derek transformed the moment the doorbell rang. His shoulders straightened. His smile widened. His voice took on that smooth, confident tone he used when he wanted people to admire him. He greeted everyone like a host, welcoming them into an estate. Come in, come in. So glad you could make it. Not Brooke is so glad. Not welcome to my mother-in-law's home? Just come in. Ashley stood beside him in a navy dress, laughing lightly, touching his arm at the right moments. She looked beautiful, polished, composed. I watched her from the kitchen doorway and tried to remember the little girl who used to run to me with grass stains on her knees. Noah came downstairs in a button-up shirt, tugging at his collar. Do I have to stay the whole time? He whispered. I smiled, at least through dinner. He leaned closer. Your casserole smells better than their fancy fish. I almost laughed. Don't let your mother hear you say that. He grinned, and for a moment the tightness in my chest eased. The guests were friendly enough. There was a couple from Derek's church group, a woman from his consulting circle, and a man named Grant, who apparently worked in commercial real estate. I noticed that because Derek mentioned it twice. They complimented the house as they stepped through the entryway. Beautiful place, so much character. This neighborhood is really coming back. Derek beamed as if he had built the walls himself. Thank you, he said. We've been making some changes. Still a lot to do, but we're getting there. I stood near the dining room, holding a pitcher of iced tea, waiting for him to correct himself. He did not. Grant, the real estate man, looked toward the staircase. Original woodwork, yes, Derek said. Mostly original. Some of it needs updating, but the bones are good. The bones are good. Henry's words stolen and emptied of love. I felt my fingers tighten around the pitcher handle. Dinner began with laughter. Derek poured wine. Ashley passed plates. I sat at the far end of the table, not at the head where I had sat for decades, but near the kitchen, because Ashley said it would be easier for serving. Noah sat beside me. The salmon was praised. The charcuterie board was admired. Someone asked where Ashley had bought the linen napkins. Derek told a story about a client in Cincinnati, and everyone laughed. Then the casserole was passed. Noah took a large helping. One of the women smiled politely and said, "Oh, this looks comforting." Ashley gave a small laugh. "My mom made that. She loves her traditional recipes." There was nothing cruel in the sentence by itself, but the way she said traditional made it sound like outdated, like quaint, like something tolerated. Derek took a small spoonful and said Brooke keeps us connected to the past. Everyone chuckled. I smiled because that was what women of my generation were trained to do when embarrassment was served at the table. We smiled so no one would notice the wound. Halfway through dinner, Grant turned to me. "So, Brooke, are you enjoying living with Ashley and Derek?" My fork stopped. Noah looked at me. Ashley's face changed before I even answered. "I'm sorry," I said. Grant gestured kindly. "I just mean it must be nice having family take you in. My mother moved in with my sister last year. Big adjustment, but good for everyone. Having family take you in." The words seemed to echo off every wall. Before I could speak, Ashley laughed lightly. "Yes, Mom stays with us now," she said. "It's been an adjustment, but we're making it work." The table continued breathing. I did not. Mom stays with us now, in my house, at my table. Under the roof, Henry and I had paid for one painful month at a time. I looked at Ashley, waiting for her to realize what she had said, waiting for shame to cross her face, waiting for my daughter to correct herself. She lifted her wineglass instead. Something inside me cracked quietly. I set down my fork. "Actually," I said, keeping my voice calm, "Ashley and Derek are staying with me." The room went still. Derek's smile hardened. Ashley's eyes flashed toward me sharp and warning. I looked around the table. "This is my home. Henry and I bought it more than 30 years ago." Noah stared down at his plate, but I saw the corner of his mouth tighten as if he was trying not to smile. Grant blinked. "Oh, I apologize. I misunderstood." "No apology needed," I said. "It seems there has been some confusion." Ashley pushed back her chair. "Mom, can you help me in the kitchen for a second?" Her voice was sweet. Her eyes were not. I followed her because I did not want to make a scene, though looking back, I understand the scene had already been made. Not by me, by the lie. The moment we entered the kitchen, Ashley turned on me. "Why would you do that?" I stared at her. Do what embarrass us in front of everyone. Ashley, you told them I stay with you. It was just a phrase. No, it was not. She crossed her arms. You knew what I meant. I knew exactly what you meant. That's why I corrected it. Her face flushed. Mom, Derek is trying to build relationships. These people matter for his work. And I don't matter. That is not what I said. It is what you showed. Ashley looked toward the dining room, lowering her voice. You always do this. I stepped back slightly. Do what make everything about your feelings. One little comment, and suddenly we're all supposed to stop and reassure you. The words hit me harder than I expected. I am not asking to be reassured, I said. I am asking not to be erased. Ashley's mouth tightened. No one is erasing you. You moved me out of my bedroom. You packed away pictures of your father. Derek changed the locks. And now you tell strangers I live with you. She looked away. For 1 second, I thought she might soften. Then she said, maybe if you would stop clinging to every corner of this house, we could actually move forward. I felt the air leave my lungs. Move forward. That was what they called taking over. Before I could answer, Derek stepped into the kitchen. Everything okay? He asked, though his tone made it clear he already knew. Ashley wiped at the corner of her eye, though I had not seen a tear fall. Mom is upset. Derek looked at me with practiced patience. Brooke tonight is important, so I've been told. We are not trying to disrespect you. Then stop disrespecting me. His expression cooled. You know, this is exactly why Ashley worries about you. You get worked up over small things. Small things. A name removed, a room taken, a life rewritten. I looked at my daughter. Do you agree with him? Ashley hesitated. That hesitation was answer enough. Then she whispered, I think you need to learn when to step back. I nodded slowly. Not because I agreed, because I finally understood the shape of the room I was standing in. They did not want help caring for me. They wanted me smaller, quieter, grateful, manageable. Dinner is getting cold, Derek said. He turned and walked back out. Ashley followed him after one last look at me, a look that held irritation, embarrassment, and something else I could not name. I stayed in the kitchen for a moment, gripping the edge of the counter. The casserole sat on the stove, half covered with foil. Its warm smell rose around me, and suddenly I remembered Henry standing behind me years ago, stealing bites before church potlucks, laughing when I slapped his hand away. I pressed my palm over my mouth. I would not cry where they could see. When I returned to the dining room, everyone pretended nothing had happened. That is another thing families and polite society have in common. They can smell smoke and still compliment the curtains while the house burns. After the guests left, Ashley disappeared upstairs. Derek stayed in the living room laughing too loudly at something on his phone. I began clearing plates. Noah came in quietly with 2 glasses in his hands. I'll help, he said. You don't have to. I want to. We worked in silence for a few minutes. Then he set a plate in the sink and whispered, Grandma, I'm sorry. I looked at him. For what? For them. My heart broke in a new place. Oh, sweetheart. I touched his cheek. You are not responsible for grown people's choices. His eyes were shiny. Mom shouldn't have said that. No, I said softly. She shouldn't have. He glanced toward the living room, then lowered his voice even more. Dad tells people stuff like that when you're not around. My hands stilled under the running water. What kind of stuff Noah swallowed? That you're having trouble keeping up. That they had to come here because you needed help. That this place is basically becoming theirs anyway. The kitchen seemed to tilt. I turned off the faucet. Thank you for telling me. He looked scared then. Please don't say I did. I won't. After he went upstairs, I stood alone in the kitchen listening to Derek laugh in the next room. Then I dried my hands, walked quietly to the back bedroom, and took Henry's metal document box from the closet again. This time, I did not just touch the folder labeled House Documents. I opened it. Inside were copies of the deed property tax records, mortgage satisfaction papers, insurance documents, and several envelopes I had not looked at in years. I placed them carefully on the bed, one by one, like evidence. Then I found a smaller envelope tucked inside the folder, sealed with my name written across the front, in Henry's handwriting. Brooke. My breath caught. I did not open it yet, not that night. Some part of me knew that once I did, there would be no going back. So I put the envelope aside, gathered the deed and tax records, and slipped them into a separate folder. I carried that folder to my dresser and hid it beneath a stack of old sweaters Ashley had not bothered to move. Then, I sat on the edge of the bed in the room they had given me and looked at Henry's photograph. They think I don't know what's happening, I whispered. The house was quiet now, but for the first time, I was not. Inside me, something had awakened. Not anger, exactly. Something steadier. A decision. If Ashley and Derek wanted to rewrite the story of my home, they were about to learn that I still had the original papers. I did not open Henry's envelope the next morning, or the morning after that. For 3 days it sat inside the top drawer of my dresser tucked beneath a stack of folded sweaters waiting. Part of me wanted to know what Henry had written. Another part was afraid, not because I feared what the letter might say, but because I feared what it might confirm. For years I had protected my image of Ashley, even after the bedroom, even after the dinner, even after hearing that Derek had been telling people the house was practically theirs. A mother can endure an astonishing amount of pain if it allows her to keep believing her child is still the person she remembers. But deep down, I was beginning to understand something difficult. The daughter I missed so desperately might no longer exist. Or perhaps she did exist somewhere beneath layers of resentment, ambition, and influence. Either way, I could not reach her by pretending everything was fine. The following Thursday, I learned just how far things had gone. I had gone downstairs early to make coffee before anyone else woke up. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock above the stove. I liked those moments. For a few minutes, the house felt like mine again. I poured coffee into Henry's mug and sat at the kitchen table watching dawn brighten the backyard. Then I heard voices. Derek's office door was partially open. Normally he worked upstairs, but lately he had turned the old den into a workspace. At first I paid no attention. Then I heard my name. I froze. The voices were low, but the house was quiet enough that certain words carried. She'll agree eventually. Derek. A pause. Then another voice muffled through a speakerphone. I could not make out the reply. Derek continued. The property is worth significantly more than she realizes. My stomach tightened. I set my mug down carefully. Yes, the location is excellent. Pause. I know the title, situation. Pause. No, not yet. My pulse began pounding. Without making a sound, I moved closer to the hallway. The office door remained slightly open. I could see Derek sitting at his desk with a headset on. His laptop screen displayed spreadsheets. A yellow legal pad sat beside him. More importantly, I saw the logo on the open folder near his elbow. A real estate company. The same company whose name Grant had mentioned during dinner. Look, Derek was saying, the old lady isn't going to live there forever. The old lady. Not Brooke. Not my mother-in-law. The old lady. I gripped the wall. If we position this correctly, everyone benefits. Pause. She's emotional, but Ashley knows how to talk to her. The room seemed to spin. Ashley knows how to talk to her. Not care for her. Not support her. Talk to her. Persuade her. Manage her. I suddenly felt sick. The call ended a few minutes later. I hurried back into the kitchen before Derek emerged. When he walked through moments later, he smiled pleasantly. "Morning, Brooke." I stared at him. He smiled exactly the same way a man smiles after discussing how to sell a used car. "Morning." He grabbed a bottle of water from the refrigerator and left, as if nothing had happened. As if he had not just discussed my future over coffee. That afternoon, Ashley drove me somewhere. At first, she framed it as a surprise. "Mom, let's go out." I looked up from my book. "Out where?" "You'll see." Something in her voice made me uneasy. But I went, partly because I wanted time alone with my daughter. Partly because I still hoped. Hope can survive long after evidence dies. The drive took nearly 20 minutes. Eventually, Ashley turned into a beautifully landscaped property, surrounded by brick buildings. My stomach dropped. A sign near the entrance read, "Willow Creek Senior Living Community." I stared at it. Ashley parked. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, she said, "Mom?" I turned slowly. "What is this?" "It's just a visit." "A visit?" "Yes." I looked back at the building. Older residents sat on benches near a fountain. A golf cart moved along a walking path. The place was clean, pleasant, carefully designed, and completely irrelevant to anything I wanted. "You brought me to a retirement community." Ashley sighed. "Please don't call it that." "What should I call it?" "It's independent living." I laughed, not because anything was funny, because sometimes pain escapes wearing the wrong face. "Ashley." She looked away. "I just think you should keep an open mind." "About what?" "About the future." There it was again. The future. Always the future. Never the present. Never the fact that I was sitting in a car outside a facility I had never expressed interest in. "Ashley." My voice shook. "Did I ask for this?" "No." "Did I say I wanted to move, Nye?" "No." "Then why are we here?" Her hands tightened on the steering wheel. For a moment, she looked exhausted. Not guilty. Exhausted, as if I were creating work for her by resisting. "You don't understand," she said quietly. "Then explain it." She stared through the windshield. "Derek and I worry about you." I almost believed her. Almost. Then she added, "The house is too much responsibility for one person." There it was. Not concern. The house. Always the house. I opened the car door. "Mom, I'm not going inside." "At least look around." "No?" "You haven't even seen it." "I don't need to." Ashley closed her eyes. "You're being stubborn." The words hit me harder than she intended, because I had heard them before. Years earlier, when she was 16 and wanted to skip school. When she was 20 and wanted to quit college after one difficult semester. When she was 26 and wanted to marry Derek after only 9 months. Back then, she called me stubborn because I asked questions. Now she called me stubborn because I protected myself. Funny how definitions change depending on who benefits. The drive home was silent. That evening, I sat alone in my room and finally opened Henry's envelope. The paper inside was yellowed slightly. His handwriting covered both sides. "My dearest Brooke, if you are reading this, Then something has happened that made you feel uncertain. I stopped reading. Tears blurred the words. Henry knew me too well. I took a breath and continued. You have always trusted people more than I do. It is one of the reasons I loved you. It is also one of the reasons I worried about you. If someone is pressuring you about the house, please remember this: you owe nobody your home. Not because they are family. Not because they are struggling. Not because they make you feel guilty. Home is not something you surrender to earn love. I pressed a hand against my mouth. The words felt less like a letter and more like Henry speaking directly to me. The letter continued. If anyone ever asks you to sign documents regarding the property, call Charles Whitman immediately. Do not rely on explanations from family members. Do not rely on promises. Get independent advice. Trust facts. Trust documents. Trust yourself. By the time I finished reading, I was crying openly. Not because I felt weak, because for the first time in months, someone had spoken to me as if I still possessed wisdom, as if I still deserved respect, as if my instincts mattered. I folded the letter carefully and returned it to the envelope. Then I picked up my phone. Charles Whitman's business card was still inside the document box. My fingers trembled as I dialed. The call went to voicemail. Charles, I said after the tone. This is Brooke Nichols, Henry's wife. My voice cracked. I think I need your help. I hung up. Less than 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Charles. I answered immediately. Brooke. His voice sounded older than I remembered, but steady. Charles. Is everything all right? I looked toward the bedroom door, toward the hallway where Ashley and Derek moved through my house, toward the future they seemed so eager to arrange for me. No, I said honestly. There was a brief pause. Then Charles asked the question that changed everything. Has someone been pressuring you regarding the property? I closed my eyes. For the first time, I stopped protecting them. Yes. The silence on the other end became very still. Then Charles said something that made my heart pound. Brooke, I need you to listen carefully. I gripped the phone tighter. Okay. Do not sign anything. Henry's words. Exactly. Not a transfer. Not a power of attorney. Not a refinance document. Nothing. Fear moved through me. What aren't they telling me? Another pause. Then Charles said quietly, before Henry passed away, he made certain legal changes specifically to protect you. My breath caught. What kind of changes? I'd rather explain in person. My pulse thundered. What do you mean, Brooke? He said gently. The house may not be in the position Derek thinks it is. I sat upright. What does that mean? Let's meet. When? As soon as possible. After we hung up, I sat motionless on the edge of the bed. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Downstairs, I could hear Ashley laughing at something on television. Derek's voice drifted through the floorboards. Normal, relaxed, confident, as if they already knew how this story ended. But for the first time, I wasn't so sure. Because somewhere between Henry's letter and Charles's warning, a possibility had emerged. A possibility neither Ashley nor Derek seemed to know existed. And whatever it was, Henry had hidden it carefully enough that he trusted it to protect me even after he was gone. For the next 3 days, I said almost nothing about my conversation with Charles Whitman. I smiled when Ashley spoke to me. I nodded when Derek discussed home repairs. I sat through dinner conversations and listened to plans being made around me as if I were a piece of furniture that occasionally answered questions. But inside, everything had changed. Charles had agreed to meet me the following week at his office. Until then, he had only one instruction: Observe. Don't confront. Don't sign anything. And most importantly, let them show you exactly what they want. It turned out I did not have to wait long. The family meeting happened on a Sunday evening. Ashley announced it after lunch. Derek and I think we should all sit down together tonight. My stomach tightened immediately. Noah looked up from his phone. A family meeting, Ashley smiled. Nothing bad. We just need to discuss some things. Derek added, long-term planning. There was that phrase again, long-term planning. I almost laughed. Every time Derek used those words, somebody else's future became smaller while his became larger. The meeting took place in the living room after dinner. Henry's recliner remained in its corner, though Derek had recently suggested replacing it because it was taking up too much space. I sat in my usual chair. Ashley sat beside Derek on the couch. Noah chose the armchair near the window. He looked uncomfortable before anyone spoke. Smart boy. He had started sensing storms before the thunder arrived. Derek folded his hands together. Brooke, first of all, we want you to know that everything we're doing comes from a place of love. Whenever someone begins a conversation that way, it rarely ends well. I smiled politely. Of course. Ashley nodded eagerly. We only want what's best for you. I waited. Derek continued. You've been through a lot these past few years. I said nothing. You lost Henry. Silence. You've had to manage the house alone. Silence. You're getting older. There it was, the foundation beneath every argument, age, not because they cared about it, because they could use it. Ashley leaned forward. Mom, we're worried. Worried about what? She exchanged a glance with Derek. The glance lasted only a second. But I saw it. They had rehearsed this. We worry that you're carrying too much responsibility. I folded my hands in my lap. I've managed fairly well so far. That's not the point, Derek said gently. Actually, I thought that is exactly the point, but I let him continue. We think it's time to make certain arrangements before a crisis happens. Noah shifted in his chair. I noticed he was already uncomfortable. Good. Someone else could see what was happening. What kind of arrangements? I asked. Ashley took a breath. Financial ones. There it was. Not loneliness, not health, not companionship, money, property, control. The conversation had finally reached its real destination. Derek pulled a folder from the coffee table. A folder, prepared in advance. I felt my pulse slow instead of quicken. Charles had been right. Let them show you. Derek opened it carefully. Inside were several documents. Professional looking, neatly organized. Dangerous. These are just precautionary measures. I almost smiled. Just. The most dangerous word in manipulation. Just sign. Just agree. Just trust us. Just give away what belongs to you. What kind of measures? I asked. Ashley answered this time. A financial power of attorney. The room went very still. I already knew enough from Charles to recognize the significance. A power of attorney. Authority. Control. Access. Decision-making. Exactly what Henry had warned me about. I forced myself to appear confused. A power of attorney. Derek nodded. Nothing extreme. Then why, I wondered, did you prepare paperwork before asking me whether I wanted it? It would allow Ashley and me to help manage things if necessary. If necessary. Exactly. Ashley jumped in quickly. Mom, think about emergencies. I looked at her. I do. No, really think about them. I nearly laughed, as if I spent every day floating through life unaware of mortality. As if caring for a dying husband had not educated me thoroughly about emergencies. What specifically worries you? I asked. Ashley hesitated, then came the answer. What if something happens and we can't access accounts? Not me, accounts. What if bills go unpaid? Bills I had paid for decades? What if decisions need to be made quickly? Decisions I had managed since before Ashley knew how to write her name. Derek slid the papers closer. These documents simply provide flexibility. Flexibility. Another pretty word. I glanced toward Noah. His face had gone pale. Good, he could hear it too. Ashley lowered her voice. Mom, we're trying to help. Help me do what? Prepare. I looked at the documents, then back at her. For what? The question hung in the room. For a moment, nobody answered. Then Derek did. For the reality that you're not getting younger. There it was. The blunt version. Not concern, not support. Management. They were preparing for my decline long before it existed. I sat quietly. The silence stretched long enough to make Ashley nervous. Mom? I looked down at the paperwork, then at Derek, then at my daughter. I thought about the assisted living visit, the real estate phone call, the locks, the bedroom, the dinner, the lies. And suddenly, something became very clear. This meeting was not their first step. It was simply the first step they believed they could openly reveal. Everything else had been preparation, testing boundaries, moving pieces, seeing how much they could take before I resisted. Ashley misinterpreted my silence. Tears appeared in her eyes. Real ones this time, or convincing enough to be dangerous. Mom, please don't make this hard. The words hit me unexpectedly, not because they were cruel, because they sounded sincere. Ashley actually believed she was the victim here. She believed my refusal would be an inconvenience inflicted upon her. The realization broke my heart more than Derek ever could. Noah, Derek suddenly said. The boy looked up. Tell your grandmother what you think. My head snapped toward him. Using a child, of course. Noah looked trapped. Dad. It's okay. No, it wasn't. It absolutely wasn't. Ashley smiled encouragingly. We just want your opinion. Poor Noah, 15 years old and being drafted into a battle he never chose. He swallowed, then looked directly at me. To his credit, he didn't lie. I think Grandma seems okay. Silence. Derek's expression tightened immediately. Ashley blinked. Noah continued. I mean, she's always paid her bills. Nobody spoke. I've never seen her forget anything important. The room became painfully quiet. Derek cleared his throat. That's not really the issue. Noah looked down, but the damage was done. Truth had entered the room. Even briefly, I wanted to hug him. Instead, I stayed silent. Eventually, Ashley pushed the papers closer again. Mom, nobody expects you to sign tonight. A lie. They absolutely hoped I would. But at least read them? I nodded slowly. I'll review them. Relief flashed across Derek's face. Too quickly, too intensely. Interesting. Good, he said. Very good. Not because he cared about my understanding, because he thought I might cooperate. Then came the moment that revealed even more. Ashley relaxed visibly. Once that's settled, we can move on to the next stage. My heart skipped. The next stage. Derek shot her a quick look. Too late. I saw it. So did Noah. Ashley realized her mistake immediately. What next stage? I asked calmly. Oh. She stumbled. Nothing major. What next stage? Derek answered instead. We've discussed future housing options. There it was. The assisted living facility. The pieces connected instantly. Housing options, power of attorney, property discussions, real estate calls, everything. Ashley rushed to explain. Only someday. Distant future. No decisions. No pressure. The more she spoke, the worse it sounded. I simply nodded. Then I did something they never expected. I smiled. Not a forced smile. Not an angry smile. A warm smile. The kind of smile that made them think I was surrendering. Ashley visibly relaxed. Derek leaned back. The tension left the room. Thank you for understanding, Ashley said. Understanding. If only she knew. I appreciate your concern, I replied, and technically that wasn't a lie. I appreciated seeing exactly who they had become. The meeting ended shortly afterward. Ashley seemed hopeful. Derek seemed satisfied. Noah seemed miserable. Later that night, after everyone went upstairs, there was a soft knock on my bedroom door. Come in. The door opened. Noah stepped inside. He looked nervous. Grandma. Yes. He closed the door behind him. Then he whispered, They've been talking about this for months. My heart stopped. What? The paperwork? I stared at him. They thought if they waited until you got used to us living here, you'd be more likely to agree. The room felt suddenly colder. How much have you heard? His eyes dropped. A lot. I sat very still. Noah looked up again, and then he said the sentence that changed everything. Grandma, I don't think the power of attorney is what Dad really wants. A chill moved through me. What do you mean? Noah hesitated. Then he whispered, I heard him tell Mom that getting the paperwork signed would make selling the house easier later. The room went silent. Completely silent. There it was. Not suspicion. Not fear. Not possibility. Confirmation. The house. It had always been the house, and for the first time, I knew with certainty that Henry's warning had not been paranoia. It had been preparation. I barely slept after Noah left my room. His words replayed in my mind long after the house had gone quiet. Getting the paperwork signed would make selling the house easier later. Not might, not could, would. The certainty in that sentence frightened me more than anything Derek had said himself, because children are terrible liars, especially good children. And Noah was a good child. If he told me he heard something, I believed him. The next morning, I drove to Charles Whitman's office. I did not tell Ashley. I did not tell Derek. I simply said I had errands to run. Ashley barely looked up from her phone. Okay, Mom. Mom. The word felt strange now, not because I stopped being her mother, because she had started using the title without respecting the relationship behind it. Charles's office sat in an old brick building downtown, only a few blocks from the courthouse. The waiting room looked exactly as I remembered it. Dark wood furniture, law books, a coffee machine that probably hadn't been replaced in 20 years. Even the receptionist was familiar, though her hair had gone completely gray since Henry's funeral. Brooke. She smiled warmly. It's good to see you. I wished the circumstances were different. Charles greeted me personally. He looked older. Of course he did. We all did. His hair was white now, and deep lines framed his eyes, but his handshake remained firm. Come in. The moment his office door closed, his expression changed. The friendliness remained. The warmth remained. But now there was concern, too. Real concern. Not the performative kind Ashley and Derek used. The genuine kind. Tell me everything. So I did. The locks. The bedroom. The dinner. The assisted living visit. The real estate conversations. The power of attorney paperwork. The family meeting. Noah's warning. Everything. Charles listened without interrupting, only taking occasional notes. When I finished, he leaned back slowly. Then he sighed. Henry was afraid of exactly this. My chest tightened. What do you mean? Charles opened a file drawer beside his desk. After several moments, he removed a thick folder. I recognized Henry's name immediately. Henry Nichols Estate Planning. The sight of it made my throat ache. Charles placed the folder on his desk. About a year before he died, Henry asked me to help restructure certain assets. I frowned. What assets? The house. My pulse quickened. Charles opened the folder. Inside were documents I had never seen before. Pages covered with signatures. Legal language. Notarizations. Property records. I remember signing some things when Henry was sick. You did? He nodded. But Henry intentionally kept the details simple because he didn't want you overwhelmed. That sounded exactly like my husband. Always protecting me. Sometimes too much. Charles slid one document toward me. Read the highlighted section. I adjusted my glasses, then read it twice. Because the first time I thought I misunderstood. The house. The house was entirely protected under a structure Henry had created specifically to prevent coercion, manipulation, or unauthorized transfer. The property could not be sold, could not be refinanced, could not be transferred, unless I personally signed under very specific legal conditions, with independent legal counsel, after a separate review process, and any power of attorney would be unable to override those protections. I looked up, speechless. Charles smiled slightly. Henry wasn't naive. My eyes filled with tears. No. He loved Ashley. I know. But he also understood human nature. I stared at the paperwork. The room blurred. Not from confusion, from relief. For months, I had felt like prey. Now, for the first time, I understood something. I wasn't trapped. I was protected. The difference mattered a great deal. Charles folded his hands. There's more. My heart sank slightly. More. What? Derek contacted my office. The room went still. When? 3 months ago. My pulse quickened. Before they moved in? Shortly before, a cold feeling settled into my stomach. What did he want? Charles opened another section of the file. He asked questions regarding potential property transfer procedures. I stared at him. What? He claimed he was helping family members prepare long-term plans. I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. Of course he had. Charles continued. We declined to provide information. Did Ashley know? He hesitated. I can't answer that. Which meant he suspected she did. The realization hurt more than I expected. Because despite everything, some part of me still wanted Ashley to be innocent. Manipulated. Misled. Tricked. The alternative was harder. The alternative was choice. Charles seemed to read my thoughts. Brooke. I looked up. Whether Ashley understands the full situation or not, you need to focus on protecting yourself. I nodded slowly, because he was right. The conversation continued for nearly an hour. By the end, Charles gave me several instructions. Do not sign anything, photocopy any paperwork they provide, document conversations, keep records, stay calm, and most importantly, let them keep talking. People reveal themselves when they believe they've already won. By the time I returned home, I felt different. Not stronger exactly. More grounded. Like someone had finally handed me a flashlight after months of walking through darkness. The opportunity to use it came sooner than expected. 2 nights later, Ashley and Derek left for dinner. Noah stayed home. Around 8:30, he knocked softly on my door. "Grandma, come in." He entered carrying 2 mugs of hot chocolate. "Peace offering." I smiled. "You know me too well." He sat on the edge of the chair beside my bed. For several minutes, we talked about school, basketball, history class, college plans, normal things. Then his expression changed. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you okay?" The question caught me off guard. I studied him. He looked genuinely worried. Not about the house. About me. The difference nearly broke my heart. "I'm getting there." He nodded, then stared into his mug. "Dad's been acting weird." I said nothing, letting him continue. "He argues with Mom a lot now." That surprised me, because in public, Derek controlled everything. Every conversation, every room, every narrative. "What about—" Noah shrugged. "Money mostly." Money. Interesting. The same word appeared everywhere lately, like a thread connecting everything. "Have things been difficult?" I asked carefully. He hesitated, then nodded. "More than they tell people." I remembered the expensive dinners, the confidence, the image Derek worked so hard to project. Sometimes the loudest success hides the biggest failure. Noah lowered his voice. "I heard Dad yelling last week." My attention sharpened. "About what?" "He said if something didn't happen soon, they'd lose everything." A chill ran through me. Everything, not struggling, not tight finances, everything. The word felt important, very important. I kept my expression neutral. "What did your mom say?" "Mostly that he needed to stop pushing." My heart skipped. Stop pushing. The phrase echoed in my mind. Stop pushing. Meaning Derek was pushing. Ashley knew it. Maybe she disliked it. Maybe she feared it. But she knew. Noah continued. "I don't think Mom likes what's happening anymore." That surprised me, because lately Ashley seemed fully committed. Then again, appearances can lie. Lord knows I had spent months pretending everything was fine. Maybe she had too. Later that night, after Noah went upstairs, I sat alone in my room thinking. The puzzle pieces were slowly connecting. Derek wasn't just greedy. He was desperate. Desperate people become dangerous. Not because they're evil, because fear makes them rationalize anything. The next clue arrived unexpectedly the following morning. Derek left for work early. In a rush, for once. Normally he controlled every detail, every movement, every impression. But this morning, he forgot something. A folder. It sat on the dining room table, half hidden beneath his laptop bag. I wasn't searching for it. I was dusting. At least that's what I told myself. Then I noticed a page sticking out. Numbers, financial projections, company statements, business records. My pulse quickened. Charles's words echoed. Let them reveal themselves. I stepped closer. The document wasn't about my house, not directly. It was about Derek. And what I saw changed everything. Several accounts showed significant losses. Credit obligations, loans, past due notices. One page contained a handwritten note, need liquidity within 6 months. Another property solution remains best option. Property solution. Not home, not family, not Brooke. Property. I heard the garage door begin to open. Immediately I stepped away. Moments later, Derek entered. He looked exhausted, really exhausted. For the first time since moving in, not polished, not confident, scared. He spotted the folder instantly, and panic flashed across his face. Only briefly, but I saw it. Then the mask returned. "Morning, Brooke." I smiled. "Morning." He grabbed the folder. Too quickly. Too protectively. Confirmation. Pure confirmation. Whatever problems existed in Derek's life had become serious. Serious enough that my home looked like an answer. That afternoon, as I watered the flowers near the porch, Linda Harper walked over carrying a pie. She handed it to me, then studied my face. "You know something now?" It wasn't a question. I laughed softly. "No one ever sneaks anything past you?" Linda smiled. 30 years working in a school office? She lowered her voice. "I've seen every kind of family problem there is." I looked at the pie. Then, at my friend. "Tell me something honestly." "Always." "Have you ever watched someone slowly realize the people they trust aren't who they thought they were?" Linda's expression softened immediately. "More times than I can count." I swallowed hard. "Does it get easier?" She shook her head. "No." Then she squeezed my hand. "But clarity is still better than confusion." I stood there after she left staring at the house. My house. Henry's house. The house Derek wanted. The house Ashley might be helping him pursue. For months, I had been reacting, surviving, enduring. But now I understood something important. The truth was no longer hiding. The truth was walking around my living room every day. And sooner or later, it was going to collide with the protections Henry had left behind. When it did, someone was going to be shocked. I just wasn't sure yet whether it would be Derek, Ashley, or both. After my meeting with Charles, I stopped feeling like a victim in my own house. I still felt hurt, still disappointed, still heartbroken every time I looked at Ashley and remembered the little girl who used to leave handmade Mother's Day cards on my pillow. But fear was no longer driving me. Knowledge was, and knowledge changes everything. For months, I had reacted emotionally to what Ashley and Derek were doing. Now, I began paying attention, really paying attention. Charles had given me a simple piece of advice. Document everything. So I did, quietly, carefully, without announcing it, without confrontation, without drama. The first thing I did was create a private email account. It felt almost ridiculous. At 67 years old, I was setting up a secret email address like a teenager hiding from her parents. But Charles had explained the importance. Keep copies of everything somewhere they can't access. So I scanned documents, photographed paperwork, saved notes, recorded dates. Not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted facts. Facts survive arguments. Facts survive manipulation. Facts survive tears. Every time Derek left papers unattended, I made note of what I saw. Every time Ashley mentioned assisted living, I wrote down the date. Every time something happened involving the house, I documented it. The process calmed me. It reminded me that I wasn't helpless. I wasn't confused. I wasn't imagining things. I was observing reality. And reality was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. A week later, Linda Harper became my first witness. We sat on her back porch drinking iced tea while the afternoon sun settled over the neighborhood. I told her more than I had previously. Not everything, but enough. Enough for her to understand. Linda listened quietly. When I finished, she set down her glass. "Brooke?" "Yes." "They've been treating you like a guest." The simplicity of the statement hit me harder than expected. Because it was true. No complicated legal language, no psychological analysis, just truth. "They changed your bedroom." I nodded. "They changed the locks." I nodded again. "They answer questions about the house as if it belongs to them." "Yes." Linda shook her head slowly. Then she looked me directly in the eyes. "If Charles needs a witness, I'll tell him exactly what I've seen." Emotion tightened my throat. Thank you. She squeezed my hand. Henry would have done the same for me. That nearly made me cry. Because she was right. Henry would have. Always. The following Saturday, another piece of the puzzle revealed itself. It happened during breakfast. Ashley was scrolling through her phone while Derek drank coffee and checked emails. Noah was eating cereal. The television played quietly in the background. A normal family morning, at least on the surface. Then Derek's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and immediately stood. Interesting. Most people answer calls. Derek fled from this one. He walked into the hallway and lowered his voice. But not enough. I understand. Pause. No, not yet. Pause. We need more time. Another pause. Then, I'm working on it. Working on what the question lingered. When he returned, his mood had changed noticeably. Tighter. More irritated. Ashley noticed too. What happened? Nothing. A lie. She knew it. I knew it. Everyone knew it. Even Noah looked skeptical. But nobody challenged him. Not directly. That evening, the challenge came from somewhere else. Me. Not openly. Not aggressively. Just carefully. Derek. He looked up from his laptop. Yes. How's the consulting business? The reaction was immediate. Tiny, but immediate. His shoulders stiffened. Only slightly. Fine. Busy? Very. I nodded, then smiled. That's wonderful. The conversation ended, but the response told me everything. Confident people elaborate, nervous people simplify, and Derek had become very nervous lately. A few days later, another opportunity appeared. I was watering flowers near the front porch when a delivery driver approached. Package for Derek Parker. I signed. The box wasn't large, but it carried a financial services company logo. Later that afternoon, I saw the package sitting partially opened on the dining room table. Several documents had been removed. One remained visible, just enough visible. A payment demand notice. Not final, not yet, but serious, very serious. The amount was substantial, far larger than ordinary household debt. My pulse quickened. Suddenly, the desperation made more sense. This wasn't about wanting a nicer lifestyle. This wasn't about greed alone. Derek needed money, soon. The house wasn't a luxury. It was a solution. That realization changed how I viewed everything. Even Ashley. Because a question emerged that I couldn't stop asking. How much did she know? Was she helping him knowingly? Or was she trapped in the same web? The answer remained unclear. Until one evening. I was walking past the upstairs hallway when I heard voices from Ashley and Derek's bedroom. Not shouting, arguing, real arguing. I froze, not because I intended to eavesdrop, because hearing them fight was so unusual. Derek normally controlled every conversation, but not this one. You promised. Ashley's voice, tight, angry. Then Derek, I'm handling it. No, you're not. Silence. Then Ashley again. Things keep getting worse. My heart began pounding. Worse. Interesting. Derek said something too quietly to hear. Ashley answered immediately. No. Another pause. Then, I'm not pushing her anymore. The words hit me like a lightning strike. Not pushing her anymore. My stomach dropped. Derek responded sharply. Again, I couldn't hear every word, but one phrase came through clearly. Don't have a choice. Then silence. A door closed. Footsteps. I moved away before anyone noticed. Back inside my room, I sat quietly thinking. For the first time, I wondered whether Ashley's role was more complicated than I had assumed. Not innocent. Certainly not innocent. But perhaps not fully in control either. The possibility troubled me, because anger is easier than ambiguity. Anger gives clear villains. Ambiguity hurts. The next major revelation arrived through Noah. Again. That boy seemed destined to become the only honest person in the house. It happened while we were cleaning leaves in the backyard. Ashley had gone shopping. Derek was supposedly working. Noah and I were filling yard bags, normal, peaceful. Then he suddenly asked, "Grandma?" "Yes?" "Did Grandpa Henry ever worry about money?" The question surprised me. "Sometimes. Everybody does, I guess. Most people." He kicked a pile of leaves, then said quietly, "Dad checks bank accounts all the time." I waited. Noah continued, "Like constantly." "Interesting. Is that unusual?" He shrugged. "I don't know." Then he added, "But he looks scared every time." The image immediately formed in my mind. The phone calls, the overdue notices, the arguments, the pressure, the property solution, the pieces fit together. Derek wasn't acting like a confident businessman. He was acting like a man drowning. And drowning people grab whatever floats, even if it belongs to someone else. That night, I received an email response from Charles. Short, simple, direct. He had reviewed additional records connected to Derek's public business filings. Nothing illegal, nothing dramatic, but enough. Enough to confirm what we suspected. Several ventures had failed. Loans existed. Financial pressure was significant. I sat staring at the email for a long time. Not because I enjoyed being right, because I didn't. The truth carried its own sadness. Ashley hadn't simply married an ambitious man. She had married a desperate one. And desperation rarely stays contained. Eventually, it spreads. Into marriages. Into families. Into homes. The following weekend, I made another important decision. I visited the bank. Not because anything was wrong. Because I wanted everything protected. Updated signatures, updated records, updated contact information. Every precaution Charles recommended. The banker knew me by name. I'd been with the same institution for decades. "Everything okay, Brooke?" I smiled. "Just staying organized." Another truth, not the whole truth, but enough. As I drove home, I felt something unfamiliar. Confidence. Not complete confidence, not victory, just stability. For months, I had felt like events were happening to me. Now, I was participating in my own defense, and that mattered a great deal. That evening, I arrived home to find Derek sitting alone in the living room. No laptop, no phone, just silence. He looked exhausted, more exhausted than I'd ever seen him. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then he looked up. Our eyes met, and something passed between us. Not openly, not verbally. Recognition. He knew I wasn't as easy to manipulate as before. I knew he was hiding more than before. Neither of us said it, but both of us understood it. The game had changed. The difference was simple. Derek still thought the house was the answer. I already knew the house was protected. He just didn't know it yet. And sooner or later, that misunderstanding was going to become a very serious problem for him. The conversation I had been dreading finally happened on a rainy Tuesday evening. For weeks, I had watched Ashley drift further away from me. Not physically. We lived under the same roof. But emotionally, she felt farther than she had when she lived 3 hours away. Every interaction had become transactional. Practical. Guarded. She asked if I had taken my medication. She asked if I needed groceries. She asked whether I planned to be home for dinner. But she no longer asked how I felt. No longer asked if I missed Henry. No longer sat beside me on the porch the way she once had. It was as if motherhood had become a service I provided years ago, and she no longer needed. Yet despite everything, I still wanted to reach her. Not because she deserved it, because she was my daughter. And mothers often keep trying long after wisdom suggests they stop. That evening, Derek had gone out to meet a client. At least that was what he claimed. Noah was upstairs studying. For the first time in weeks, Ashley and I were alone. I found her in the kitchen loading dishes into the dishwasher. The rain tapped softly against the windows. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said quietly, "Can we talk?" Ashley stiffened immediately, not because she didn't hear me, because she knew exactly what I meant. Still, she nodded. Okay. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Henry and I had paid bills, celebrated birthdays, comforted Ashley after heartbreaks, planned vacations we couldn't afford. The same table that now felt strangely unfamiliar. Ashley sat across from me, a barrier of polished wood separating mother and daughter. Neither of us knew how to cross it anymore. For several seconds, silence filled the room. Finally, I spoke. "Do you remember the yellow bicycle?" Ashley blinked. "What? The bicycle we bought when you were 8. Confusion crossed her face, then recognition. "The one with the basket?" I smiled faintly. "Yes." A tiny smile appeared on her lips, for the first time in months. "It had those ridiculous streamers?" "Pink streamers." She laughed softly. "You made Dad drive to 3 stores to find them. Because you refused to ride a bike without them." For a moment, the tension eased. The memory hung between us. Warm, human, real. Then I said, "Your father worked extra shifts to pay for that bicycle." The smile faded. I continued gently. "Do you remember how excited he was when you finally learned to ride it?" Ashley looked down. "Yes." "He ran behind you for 2 blocks?" "I remember." "Then he fell." A small laugh escaped her. "He skinned his knee." "Badly." For a brief second, we were sharing a memory instead of a conflict. I held on to that opening. "Ashley." She looked up. "Everything your father and I did was for you." Immediately, her expression changed. The walls returned, the defenses, the distance. There it was, the reaction I'd been seeing for months. And suddenly, I understood. This wasn't a new wound. It was an old one. "What?" I asked quietly. Ashley sighed. "Mom." "No." I leaned forward slightly. "Tell me." She looked away. For several moments, I thought she wouldn't answer. Then she surprised me. "You always say things like that." The words weren't angry. They were tired. Very tired. I stared at her. "What things?" "Everything we did was for you?" I frowned, because it was. "There." She pointed gently. "That." I didn't understand. Ashley rubbed her forehead. "You don't even hear it." "Hear what?" "The weight." I sat silently. Ashley looked toward the rain-streaked window. "When I was growing up, every sacrifice became a story." Pain flickered across her face. "Dad worked extra shifts. Mom skipped vacations. Money was tight. Everything was about what you gave up." I stared at her, completely stunned, because those memories felt different to me. Not burdens. Love. Acts of love. Ashley continued. "I know you cared." The words came quickly. "I know you loved me." "Then what are you saying?" She swallowed. "I'm saying that sometimes it felt like I owed you forever." The sentence landed like a physical blow. I sat very still, because for the first time, I was hearing something she had apparently carried for years. Not justification, not an excuse, a wound. Maybe a misguided one, maybe an unfair one, but real. Ashley looked down at her hands. You and Dad were amazing parents. My throat tightened. But every time I wanted something different, she stopped, then continued quietly. I felt guilty. I thought back. College, moving away, career decisions, marriage. Had I done that? Had we? I honestly didn't know. The possibility hurt. Because love can sometimes leave scars without intending to. I never wanted that. I know. Her eyes filled slightly. I know. The sadness in her voice was genuine, and somehow that made everything worse. Because it would have been easier if she were simply cruel. Instead, she was complicated, human, broken in ways I hadn't fully seen. But then, I asked the question that mattered. If that's true? She looked at me. Why are you helping Derek pressure me? The moment shattered, immediately. Her face closed again. The walls returned. I knew we'd end up here. Ashley. No. She stood. Frustration flashed across her features. You always make everything about Derek. Because Derek is the problem, I wanted to say. Instead, I remained calm. Is he? Silence. A dangerous silence. Then Ashley answered. He's trying. The words sounded weak even to her. I could hear it. She could too. I leaned forward. Trying to do what? No answer. Ashley. Nothing. I took a breath, then spoke softly. I know about the financial problems. Her head snapped toward me. There it was. Shock. Real shock. Interesting. Very interesting. She hadn't expected that. What? I know things aren't going well. Fear flickered across her face. Actual fear. Not anger. Fear. How much do you know? The question escaped before she could stop it. My heart sank. Because innocent people ask whether information is true. People hiding something ask how much you know. I know enough. She sat down slowly. For the first time all evening she looked exhausted. Completely exhausted. Not manipulative, not defensive. Just tired. Very tired. I suddenly saw traces of the little girl she'd once been. Scared. Overwhelmed. Lost. Ashley. Her eyes filled with tears. Things got bad. The confession emerged almost as a whisper. How bad? She looked away. Bad. The answer told me everything. Derek had been hiding more than business setbacks. Much more. What happened? Ashley laughed bitterly. You really think it's one thing? No. Neither do I. Silence settled between us. Finally, she spoke again. The consulting company started losing clients. I listened. Then investments went bad. Another pause. Then debt. My heart ached. Not because of the money. Because of what desperation had done to her. And Derek! She closed her eyes. He thinks he can fix everything. I already knew that. Men like Derek always believe they can fix everything. The tragedy comes when they start using other people's lives as tools. By selling my house? The words hung in the air. Ashley flinched, which was answer enough. I nodded slowly. There it is. No, but her voice lacked conviction. No. Tears spilled down her cheeks. For the first time in months. Real tears. Not strategic tears. Real ones. We just need help. Help. The word nearly broke my heart. Because beneath all the manipulation, all the pressure, all the lies, there it was. Need. Fear. Desperation. The ugly things that grow when people stop trusting themselves. I reached across the table. Not because she deserved forgiveness, because she was crying. And once you're a mother, certain instincts never die. Ashley looked at my hand, then at me. For one moment, I thought she might take it. Instead, the kitchen door opened. Derek walked inside. The timing was almost unbelievable. Ashley immediately pulled back. The vulnerability vanished, like a curtain dropping. Derek looked between us. What happened? Nobody answered. He studied Ashley's tear-streaked face, then me, and something cold settled behind his eyes. Not anger, calculation. He knew we'd talked. He didn't know what about, but he knew. The room changed instantly. The air itself felt different. Ashley stood. I should go upstairs. And just like that, the moment was gone. She left, leaving Derek and me alone. He watched her disappear up the stairs, then turned toward me. Neither of us spoke. Not immediately. Finally, he smiled. That same practiced smile. The one that never reached his eyes. Everything okay? I looked directly at him. For the first time, I didn't feel intimidated. Didn't feel confused. Didn't feel uncertain. Because now I understood something important. Ashley wasn't simply choosing Derek over me. She was trapped inside the consequences of choices she'd already made. And Derek was becoming more desperate every day. Desperate enough that whatever happened next would not remain hidden much longer. The pressure was building. The lies were multiplying. The money was running out. And sooner or later, something was going to break. I just didn't know yet whether it would be Derek's plan or Derek himself. The confrontation happened 2 weeks later. Looking back, I realize it had been building for months. Every lie, every manipulation, every conversation whispered behind closed doors, every document pushed across a table, every attempt to make me feel small in my own home. All of it was leading to that day. The day Ashley looked me in the eye and told me I was no longer family. The day everything finally came into the open. It began with what Derek called a planning meeting. By then, I had learned to be suspicious of any phrase that sounded harmless coming from him. Planning meeting, long-term strategy, future options, family solutions. Every pleasant phrase hit a sharp edge. Derek invited someone over this afternoon, Ashley told me that morning. I was sitting on the porch with a cup of tea. Who? She hesitated. Too long. Then, a real estate professional. There it was. No more pretending. No more subtlety. The mask was slipping. I looked at her calmly. Why? Ashley shifted uncomfortably. Just to discuss possibilities. Possibilities. I almost laughed. Instead, I nodded. Of course. My calmness seemed to confuse her. Good. Charles had specifically advised me not to reveal what I knew. Not yet. Mom. I looked up. For a moment, she seemed ready to say something important. Something honest. Something real. Then Derek walked into the room. The moment vanished. Just like every other moment lately. By 3 o'clock, everyone had arrived. Derek, Ashley, Noah, Linda Harper, and a realtor named Melissa Grant. Not the same Grant from dinner months earlier, but apparently from the same firm. Charles Whitman was arriving later, at least according to the plan we'd arranged. The timing mattered. Very much. Melissa was pleasant, professional, clearly uncomfortable. I suspected Derek had not provided the entire story. People rarely do when they want something. We all gathered in the living room. My living room. The room where Henry had taught Ashley to play checkers. The room where Noah had opened Christmas presents. The room where I had sat beside my husband's hospital bed during his final weeks. Now it felt like a courtroom. Derek sat confidently on the couch, too confidently. The confidence of a man who believes he already knows the outcome. Ashley sat beside him, tense, quiet. Noah sat near the window, looking miserable. Melissa organized paperwork on the coffee table. Then Derek began. "Thank you everyone for being here." I nearly rolled my eyes. He sounded like a corporate presenter, not a son-in-law. "This is really about creating opportunities." Opportunities? Of course. "We've been discussing the future of the property." Property, not home. Never home. Property. Melissa nodded politely. "The market conditions are currently very favorable." I remained silent. Derek continued. "Given Brooke's stage of life, interesting way to describe being 67. We believe it makes sense to explore options. Options, always options. Never respect, never gratitude, never dignity. Just options." Melissa opened a folder. Inside were documents, property assessments, market evaluations, listing materials, actual listing materials. I stared at them, not because I was surprised, because seeing them made the situation impossible to deny. They had moved beyond planning, beyond discussion, beyond pressure. They were preparing to sell my house, my home, the place Henry and I built together, without my permission, without my agreement, without my consent. Derek leaned forward. "We're not asking for an immediate decision." A lie? The documents already existed. The meeting already existed. The realtor already existed. The decision had clearly been expected. Ashley finally spoke. "Mom, please just listen." The sadness in her voice almost broke my heart. Almost. Then Derek pushed a document toward me. "Melissa can answer any questions." I looked down. Listing agreement. My pulse remained steady. Charles had prepared me well. Derek mistook my calmness for uncertainty. "Good." He smiled. "We all want what's best for you." "No, you want what's best for yourself." The thought remained private. For now. Melissa cleared her throat. "Mrs. Nichols, there's absolutely no pressure." Poor woman. She genuinely seemed unaware of what she'd walked into. I almost felt sorry for her. Then Derek made a mistake. A serious mistake. "Once the house sells, we can transition everyone smoothly." Transition. The word hung in the room. I looked directly at him. "Transition where?" Ashley answered. "The assisted living community." There it was. Out loud. Finally. No more pretending, no more hiding, no more euphemisms. They wanted me out. The room grew quiet. Even Melissa looked uncomfortable. I turned toward Ashley. "Without asking me?" Her eyes filled with frustration. "We've tried talking to you." "No." I shook my head. "You've tried persuading me." The distinction mattered. Ashley stood suddenly. Emotion flashed across her face. Months of tension, fear, stress, resentment, all of it rising at once. "You never listen." The room froze. I looked at her carefully. "I've listened for months." "No, you haven't." "Ashley, you don't understand anything." Her voice cracked. Tears appeared. Real tears. Painful tears. Not manipulative ones. For a moment, I saw the overwhelmed little girl beneath the grown woman. Then, the moment passed, and anger took over. Years of anger. Years I hadn't known existed. "You always make everything about your sacrifices." The words hit hard, but I remained silent. "You and Dad." Her voice rose. "Everything was about what you gave up." Ashley was crying openly now. "You don't know what it feels like." I stared at her. "What? To spend your entire life feeling like you owe someone?" The room became perfectly still. Noah looked horrified. Linda looked heartbroken. Melissa looked trapped. And Derek looked nervous. Very nervous. Because this wasn't going according to plan. Not anymore. Ashley continued. You think this house is everything? No. My voice remained calm. It isn't everything. Then why won't you help us? There it was. The truth. Not concern, not aging, not safety. Help us. The house was the help. The house was always the help. I looked directly at her. Because helping isn't the same as surrendering. Ashley laughed bitterly. Easy for you to say. I blinked. Easy. The word stunned me. Easy. 30 years of mortgage payments, cancer, widowhood, loneliness, sacrifice. Easy. Something changed inside me. Not anger, clarity, pure clarity. Ashley. She wiped tears from her face. What? I spoke gently. Very gently. Do you know what your father said before he died? Silence. She froze. Everyone froze. The mention of Henry changed everything. He told me not to sign anything. The room became very still. Derek's face changed immediately. There. The reaction. The one I'd been waiting for. Fear. Real fear. Interesting. Very interesting. I continued. He told me to call Charles Whitman if anyone pressured me about the house. Now Derek looked genuinely alarmed. Ashley noticed. I saw it happen. She noticed. The realization struck her visibly. For months, she'd watched Derek control every situation. Now suddenly, he looked worried. Why the question appeared on her face. Good. Let her ask it. Then Derek made his biggest mistake. Brooke. His voice sharpened. We're trying to be practical. Practical? I smiled. No. The room froze. The single word landed harder than shouting. No. Derek stared. No. I repeated calmly. I'm not signing anything. The silence deepened. Then Ashley exploded. Not gradually. Instantly. Months of pressure detonating at once. You don't care about this family. The words echoed through the room. Noah flinched. Linda looked shocked. Melissa stared at the floor. I remained seated. Ashley! No! She pointed at me, crying, shaking, angry, heartbroken. This isn't your family anymore. The sentence slammed into the room like a thunderclap. Silence followed. Absolute silence. Even Ashley seemed shocked she'd said it. But the words were out now. Permanent. Unavoidable. The sentence every moment had been moving toward. This isn't your family anymore. I looked at my daughter. Really looked at her. The little girl. The teenager. The woman. The stranger. All at once. Then I stood. Slowly. Calmly. Without anger. Without tears. And I said the words that changed everything. Then let me remind you whose name is on the deed. The front door opened. Perfect timing. Every head turned. Charles Whitman walked into the house carrying a leather briefcase. For 1 second, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Nobody spoke. Then Derek's face went completely white. And in that moment, I knew the game was over. He just didn't know how badly he had already lost. For several seconds after Charles Whitman entered the room, nobody spoke. The silence felt physical, heavy, dense, the kind of silence that arrives when a lie finally meets the truth. Charles closed the front door behind him and calmly removed his coat. His expression remained professional, neutral, controlled. But I had known Charles for decades. I recognized the look in his eyes. He already understood exactly what kind of situation he was walking into. Derek stood first. Charles. The forced smile on his face looked painful. I wasn't expecting you. Clearly, Charles's voice remained polite, which somehow made the word more devastating. Ashley looked from Charles to me, then back to Charles. Confusion slowly replaced anger. What is this? I met her gaze. A conversation we should have had months ago. The realtor, Melissa, shifted uncomfortably in her chair. I think perhaps I should leave. Please stay, Charles said gently. His calm confidence filled the room. You may find this discussion professionally relevant. Derek's jaw tightened. Interesting. Very interesting. Charles placed his briefcase on the coffee table and opened it. Inside sat several folders, neatly organized, prepared, documented, years of legal experience arranged in paper form. The sight alone seemed to make Derek nervous. Good. It should have. Charles sat down, then looked directly at me. Mrs. Nichols, would you like me to proceed? I nodded. Yes. Charles turned toward the room. What I'm about to explain is not complicated. His eyes moved briefly toward Derek, although certain individuals may have hoped it was. Nobody spoke. Ashley sat frozen. Noah watched nervously from his chair. Linda folded her arms. Melissa looked like she regretted accepting the appointment. Charles removed a document from the folder. The property located on Maple Ridge Lane is legally owned by Brooke Nichols. No surprise there. Everyone already knew that, or thought they did. Charles continued. However, ownership is only part of the story. Now Derek looked genuinely uncomfortable. Good. Charles placed another document beside the first. Several years before Henry Nichols passed away, he worked with my office to create extensive legal protections regarding this property. The room remained silent. Ashley frowned. What kind of protections? Charles looked directly at her. The kind designed to prevent coercion. The word landed heavily. Coercion. Not guidance, not assistance, not family planning. Coercion. Derek immediately interrupted. Nobody is coercing anyone. Charles didn't even look at him. That might have been the most humiliating part. The complete dismissal. The refusal to treat Derek as the authority he imagined himself to be. Instead, Charles continued speaking to Ashley. The property cannot be sold, transferred, refinanced, or otherwise disposed of without very specific legal requirements being met. Ashley blinked. What requirements? Independent legal review. He looked at me. Direct consent. Another page appeared. Multiple verification procedures. Another page. And protection against outside influence. The room grew increasingly quiet. Then Derek finally spoke again. That seems excessive. Charles smiled slightly. Henry disagreed. For the first time, Noah looked like he wanted to smile. I couldn't blame him. Charles continued. In practical terms, no power of attorney can override these protections. Ashley's head snapped toward Derek. The reaction happened instantly. Small, but unmistakable. Why? Because power of attorney had been their entire strategy. And suddenly, it was worthless. I saw the realization hit her. Then I saw another realization follow immediately. Derek already knew. The thought flashed across her face, and for the first time, she looked suspicious of her husband. Interesting. Very interesting, Charles continued. No one can legally pressure Mrs. Nichols into surrendering control of this property. Linda nodded slowly. Melissa lowered her eyes. The realtor clearly understood exactly where this was heading now. Then came the moment that changed everything. Derek stood, abruptly. Brooke isn't thinking clearly. The room froze. I almost laughed. There it was. The final refuge of every manipulator. If facts don't help you attack competence. Charles finally looked directly at him. The expression on his face became colder than I'd ever seen. "Excuse me." Derek straightened. "I'm saying she's emotional." The silence became dangerous. "She's grieving." Charles stared. "Henry died over 2 years ago." Derek faltered. "Well, she's older." Older. There it was again. Age. Always age. Charles calmly opened another folder, then removed several papers. Medical records. Recent medical records. Mine. Authorized by me. Prepared specifically for this possibility. I anticipated that argument. Derek's face lost color. Charles slid the documents onto the table. Mrs. Nichols recently completed a comprehensive evaluation. Ashley looked confused. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. She had no idea how much preparation had happened behind the scenes. Charles continued. "The results are clear." He tapped the report. "No cognitive impairment." Another page. "No diminished capacity." Another. "Fully competent." Another. "Entirely capable of making independent legal and financial decisions." The room fell silent again, the kind of silence that follows a door slamming shut. An argument had just died. Permanently. Derek sat back down. Hard. Ashley stared at the paperwork. Then slowly looked toward me. The expression on her face broke my heart. Not because she looked angry, because she looked confused. Completely confused. As if she were suddenly realizing there were entire conversations she'd never been included in. Entire plans she'd never known existed. Entire truths hidden from her. Then Linda spoke. "I'd like to say something." Everyone turned. Linda sat upright, calm, steady. The way teachers sit when they're about to tell children something important. "I've watched what's happened in this house." Derek visibly tensed. "Good." Linda continued. "I watched Brooke get moved out of her bedroom." Ashley lowered her eyes. "I watched the locks get changed." Silence. "I watched Henry's photographs disappear." More silence. "And I've heard Derek ask about property values more times than I can count." Melissa looked increasingly uncomfortable, because now witnesses existed. Real witnesses. Not emotional accusations. Evidence. Human evidence. Then Noah stood. The movement surprised everyone. Even me. "Grandma's telling the truth." The words were quiet, but they hit harder than shouting. Ashley looked stunned. "Noah? No." His voice cracked, but he continued. "I heard you." Silence. "I heard you talking about moving Grandma out." Ashley went pale. "I heard Dad talking about needing signatures." Derek immediately stood. "That's enough." "No." For the first time in the entire story, Noah sounded angry. Really angry. "I heard everything." The room froze. Years from now, I think I'll still remember that moment. Because it was the moment a child stopped protecting the adults around him. The moment truth became more important than loyalty. Noah looked directly at his mother. Tears filled his eyes. "You said it was for her own good." Ashley couldn't speak. "You said she'd be happier." A tear slid down his cheek. "But nobody ever asked her." The sentence landed like a hammer. Nobody ever asked her. Exactly. Charles allowed the silence to sit, then finally spoke. "There is one more thing." Everyone turned toward him. Even Derek. Charles removed another document. This one seemed different. Older. More important. Several months ago, someone contacted my office requesting information about property transfer procedures. My pulse quickened. Ashley looked confused. Derek looked terrified. Not worried. Terrified. A meaningful distinction. Charles continued. The request was denied. Silence. The caller was informed that no information would be provided. Another silence. Then Ashley asked the question. The question. The one I'd been waiting for. Who called? Charles looked directly at Derek. The answer arrived without words. Ashley's eyes widened, slowly, painfully. Disbelief spreading across her face. No? Derek said nothing. Ashley stared at him. No. Still nothing. Then she whispered, You called? The room became so quiet, I could hear rain tapping softly against the windows. Derek looked trapped. For the first time since I'd known him. Truly trapped. Because there was no clever explanation. No charm. No manipulation. No way out. Only truth. And truth can be merciless. Especially when it arrives late. Ashley looked at him as if seeing him for the first time. Not her husband. Not her partner. Not the man she'd defended. A stranger. A stranger who had been making plans involving her mother's home behind everyone's back. Even hers. The realization devastated her. I could see it happening, piece by piece. And suddenly, I understood something. This wasn't the end. Not yet. The truth had arrived. But the fallout was only beginning. Because Derek still hadn't explained why he wanted the house so badly. And judging by the look on Ashley's face, she was finally ready to ask questions he couldn't answer. Questions that were about to destroy whatever remained of the story he'd been telling. Nobody moved after Charles revealed that Derek had contacted his office. The room seemed frozen in place. Ashley stared at her husband. Derek stared at the floor. And for the first time since he had entered my life, he looked like a man without a script. No charm, no smooth explanation, no carefully prepared response. Just silence. Dangerous silence. Ashley, Derek finally spoke. His voice sounded different, smaller. She immediately stepped back. Not physically far, just enough. But after months of watching them move through the house as a united front, the distance felt enormous. You called Charles? Her voice shook. I can explain. The answer told her everything, because he hadn't denied it. A tear slid down Ashley's cheek. You actually did it. Ashley, listen. No. She raised a hand, and suddenly I saw something I hadn't seen in years. The old Ashley. The stubborn Ashley. The girl who hated being lied to. The girl who once refused to speak to a high school boyfriend for 2 weeks after discovering he'd hidden text messages. For the first time in months, she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at Derek, really looking at him, and she didn't like what she saw. What else don't I know? The question hung in the air. Derek hesitated. Too long. Much too long. Charles quietly closed his folder. Linda sat silently. Melissa looked as if she desperately wanted to disappear. Noah remained standing near the window, watching, waiting. Then Derek made the worst decision possible. He lied. Again. It wasn't a big deal. The moment those words left his mouth, Ashley laughed. Not happily, not kindly, a broken laugh. The kind people make when disappointment finally becomes certainty. Not a big deal. She stared at him. You contacted a lawyer behind my mother's back? Ashley? You spent months talking about helping her. Tears filled her eyes. You said everything was about protecting her. The room remained silent, because everyone already knew where this was going. Ashley took another step back. How long? Derek swallowed. What? How long have you been planning this? His silence answered. Months, maybe longer. The realization devastated her. I watched my daughter crumble in real time. And despite everything she had done to me, it hurt. Because no mother enjoys watching her child discover betrayal, even when that child has betrayed her first. Finally, Derek looked around the room. At Charles, at Linda, at me, and something inside him snapped. Maybe it was fear, maybe exhaustion, maybe desperation. Whatever it was, the mask fell. You all think I'm some kind of villain? Nobody answered, because none of us needed to. Derek laughed bitterly. You have no idea what it's been like. Interesting. Very interesting. This was the first honest thing he'd said all afternoon. Charles remained silent. Letting him talk. A smart move. Desperate people often reveal everything once they start. Derek paced across the living room. You think I wanted this? Ashley stared at him. What exactly didn't you want? No answer. Then, you think I enjoyed watching everything fall apart? The room grew still. Everything. Again, that word. Everything. Ashley looked confused. I noticed immediately. Apparently, she didn't know the full story either. Good. The truth was finally coming out. Derek ran a hand through his hair. The company failed. Silence. I know that, Ashley said quietly. No. He laughed bitterly. You know part of it. My pulse quickened. Part of it. Interesting. Very interesting. Ashley frowned. What does that mean? Derek looked away. For the first time, he seemed unable to meet her eyes. The room became completely silent. Then he said, It wasn't just the company. A terrible feeling settled in my stomach. Because suddenly, I knew, or thought I did, and judging by Ashley's face, she knew too. What did you do? Her voice barely rose above a whisper. Derek closed his eyes, then finally answered. I invested. Silence. Ashley blinked. Invested where? No response. Derek. His shoulders sagged, and then the truth arrived. Not all at once, but enough. Enough to destroy everything. Several ventures. Pause. Real estate. Pause. Private equity. Pause. Development projects. The room remained silent. Then Ashley asked the question. The obvious question. How much? Derek didn't answer. My heart sank, because that meant the number was enormous. Ashley asked again. How much? Still nothing. Then Noah spoke. Dad? Everyone turned. The boy's voice trembled, but he continued anyway. Tell her. The room froze. Derek looked at his son, then finally whispered, almost everything. Ashley went pale. What? Almost everything. The words echoed through the room. Almost everything. The savings, the investments, the future. Gone. My daughter sat down heavily, as if her legs could no longer support her. You told me we were struggling. His silence. You told me cash flow was tight. More silence. You told me we'd recover. Still nothing, and suddenly Ashley understood. Not just the money. Everything. The pressure. The house. The assisted living facility. The power of attorney. The manipulation. The lies. The entire plan. It had never been about helping me. It had been about saving him. Her voice cracked. How much debt? Derek looked exhausted, defeated, finished. When he answered, the number made the room go silent. Even Charles looked surprised. Even Linda. Even Melissa. The debt was far worse than anyone imagined. Not uncomfortable. Not difficult. Catastrophic. Noah sat down slowly, shock written across his face. Ashley simply stared. Then a strange thing happened. For months I had imagined this moment. The moment Derek's lies collapsed. The moment everything came into the open. I thought I would feel victorious. I didn't. I felt sad. Because nobody truly wins when a family reaches this point. The truth may be necessary, but it is rarely joyful. Ashley looked at me. Really looked at me. And for the first time in a very long time, she seemed to see what I had been enduring. The bedroom, the pressure, the manipulation, the guilt, the loneliness, all of it. Tears streamed down her face. "Mom." The single word broke my heart because it sounded like my daughter again, not the woman who had told me I wasn't family, the girl who used to crawl into bed during thunderstorms, the girl who used to hold my hand crossing parking lots, the girl I thought I'd lost. "I'm sorry." The room became perfectly still. No excuses, no qualifications, no explanations. Just, "I'm sorry." I closed my eyes briefly, because I'd waited months to hear those words, and somehow they still hurt. Ashley continued. "I should have listened." Tears. "I should have believed you." More tears. "I was so angry." I nodded slowly. "I know." She looked down. "I thought you were judging us." The honesty surprised me. "I thought you looked at our failures and blamed us." My heart softened despite everything, because now I finally understood something. Ashley hadn't been acting entirely from greed. Partly yes, partly, but also shame, fear, embarrassment. The same emotions that make people ignore warnings, the same emotions that make them trust the wrong person. Derek remained silent. For once, he had nothing left to say. No strategy, no persuasion, no leverage, only consequences. Charles finally stood. The legal situation remains unchanged. Professional, steady, calm. Exactly what the room needed. "The property belongs to Mrs. Nichols." He looked directly at me. "Nobody can force any decision." Then he looked toward Derek. "Nobody." The message was clear, painfully clear. The meeting ended shortly afterward. Melissa left first, looking relieved. Linda stayed long enough to hug me. Then she quietly went home. Charles promised to follow up the next morning. Eventually, only 4 people remained. Me, Ashley, Derek, Noah. No one knew what to say, because some truths don't end conversations. They end entire chapters. Finally, Ashley stood. She looked at Derek, the man she'd defended, trusted, followed, the man she'd nearly sacrificed her relationship with me to protect, and she said the words that changed everything. "I need you to leave." The room froze. Derek stared at her. "What? You heard me." More tears slid down her face. "I need you to leave." For the first time all evening, genuine fear appeared in Derek's eyes, because he finally understood. The house was never his. The documents were never his. The future he had been planning was never his. And now perhaps neither was the family. The house had never felt so quiet. Not after Henry died. Not after Ashley moved away. Not even after months of tension under the same roof. This was a different kind of silence. The silence that comes after a storm has ripped through everything and left people standing among the wreckage, trying to understand what remains. The morning after Derek left, I woke before sunrise. For several minutes, I lay in bed listening. No footsteps. No doors opening. No phone conversations behind closed office doors. No tense exchanges drifting through the hallway. Just stillness. the kind of stillness I used to love. Yet somehow it felt heavier now. I got dressed and walked downstairs. The kitchen was empty. A pale gray light filtered through the windows. I made coffee and carried my mug into the living room. For a long moment, I simply stood there, looking, really looking. The room seemed different, not because anything had physically changed, because I had. The gray rug Ashley bought still covered part of the hardwood floor. The modern coffee table remained. The decorative pillows were still there, but the room no longer felt occupied by someone else's plans. For the first time in months, I could breathe. My eyes moved toward the mantel. Henry's photograph sat where it belonged, front and center. I had placed it there after everyone left the previous evening. The simple act had nearly made me cry. I picked up the frame. "Well," I whispered. Henry smiled back from 30-year-old film. "I guess you were right." Not that he could answer, but somehow the room felt less lonely than it had in a very long time. A soft voice interrupted my thoughts. "Grandma." I turned. Noah stood in the doorway. His hair was messy. His eyes looked tired. The poor boy had aged years in a single week. "Couldn't sleep." He shrugged. "Not really." I nodded. "Me neither." For several seconds, we simply stood there. Then Noah crossed the room and sat beside me. No phone, no distractions. Just a grandson sitting beside his grandmother. The way families are supposed to. After a while, he asked quietly, "Are you okay?" I smiled, sadly. "That's becoming your favorite question." A small smile touched his face. "I know." The smile vanished almost immediately. "Mom cried all night." My heart tightened. Of course she had. Noah stared at the floor. "I've never seen her like that." Neither had I. Not since she was young. Not since life taught her to hide vulnerability behind confidence. The image hurt, because no matter what Ashley had done, she was still my daughter. And mothers don't stop worrying simply because they're wounded. "How is she?" I asked. Noah hesitated. "Broken." The honesty hit me hard. Broken. Not angry, not defensive. Broken. I looked toward the staircase. Part of me wanted to run upstairs and hold her. Tell her everything would be okay. The way I used to after childhood nightmares. But adult pain doesn't work that way. Some lessons can only be learned by living through them. Noah seemed to sense my thoughts. "She's blaming herself." I sighed. "Some of this is her responsibility." "I know." He looked up. "But not all of it." No, not all of it. That was the difficult truth. Ashley had made terrible choices, but she had also been manipulated by a man she trusted. The combination made everything messier, more human, less satisfying. Real life often refuses to provide perfect villains. Around noon, Ashley finally came downstairs. She looked exhausted, eyes swollen, face pale, shoulders slumped. For the first time in years, she looked exactly like someone carrying the full weight of her mistakes. Neither of us spoke immediately. She poured coffee, sat at the table, stared into her mug. The silence stretched. Not hostile, just painful. Finally, she whispered, "I'm sorry." The words came out broken, almost childlike. I sat across from her, neither rushing to forgive nor refusing to listen. Simply present. Ashley wiped at her eyes. "I keep replaying everything." I said nothing. She continued. "The bedroom." Tears formed again. "The locks." Another tear. "The things I said." The list seemed endless, because it was. Months of small betrayals rarely disappear with a single apology. Ashley laughed bitterly. "I don't even recognize myself." That sentence hurt more than anything else, because I understood exactly what she meant. For months, I hadn't recognized her either. We talked for nearly 2 hours. Not about legal documents. Not about money. Not about Derek. About us. For the first time in years. Really us. She told me things she'd never said before. Resentments, fears, shame. The pressure she felt to appear successful. The embarrassment of financial problems. The exhaustion of constantly trying to fix things she couldn't control. Some of it I understood. Some of it I disagreed with. But all of it was honest. And honesty felt like oxygen after months of manipulation. By the end of the conversation, neither of us had all the answers. But we finally had something else. Truth. It wasn't enough to repair everything. Not yet. But it was a beginning. That evening, Ashley surprised me. She packed several bags. Not dramatically, not angrily, quietly, purposefully. I watched from the hallway. "What are you doing?" She looked up. "I think I should leave for a while." The answer stunned me. "What?" She swallowed. "I need to figure out who I am when I'm not cleaning up Derek's mistakes." The honesty caught me off guard. Ashley zipped another bag. "I need to stop expecting you to carry consequences that belong to me." I stared at her. For months, I'd imagined forcing her out. Demanding accountability. Creating boundaries. Now she was doing it herself. Not because I asked, because she finally understood. "I'm not abandoning you," she said quickly. "I know. I just..." Her voice cracked. "I need space to become someone better than the person I've been lately." Tears filled my eyes, because growth often sounds exactly like that. Painful, uncomfortable, necessary. We agreed she would stay temporarily with a friend across town. Noah would remain with her, at least for now. The decision hurt, but it felt healthy. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. Healthy. Before leaving, Ashley stood near the front door, looking around the house. The real house, not the asset, not the property, the home. I could almost see memories moving behind her eyes. Christmas mornings, birthday parties, school pictures, Henry, me, her childhood, everything. Then she turned toward me. "I treated this place like a solution." I nodded. Yes. A tear slid down her cheek. "It was never a solution." "No." "What was it?" The question broke my heart, because she already knew, but needed to hear it. I smiled softly. "It was a home," Ashley cried openly then. Not because of the house, because she'd nearly forgotten the difference. After she left, the house became quiet again. Truly quiet. But this time, the silence felt different. Healing. Not empty. Healing. Several days passed, then a week. During that time, Noah called constantly. Ashley texted occasionally. Brief messages. Nothing dramatic. No demands. No expectations. Just small efforts. Tiny bridges being rebuilt one board at a time. Then one afternoon, a letter arrived. Handwritten. Addressed to me. The handwriting was unmistakable. Ashley. I sat at the kitchen table and opened it slowly. Inside were 6 pages. Every line written by hand. No excuses. No requests. No attempts to rewrite history. Just honesty. She admitted what she'd done. Admitted what she'd ignored. Admitted how deeply she'd hurt me. Most importantly, she acknowledged something neither of us had fully understood before. Love without respect eventually becomes control, and control destroys relationships. I read the letter twice, then 3 times. By the end, tears covered the paper. Not because everything was fixed, because healing had finally begun. That evening, I called her. The phone rang twice. Then, Mom. The words sounded different now, gentler, more careful. I took a breath. Would you like to have lunch with me next week? Silence. Then a sob. A real one. Not dramatic, not manipulative, relieved, hopeful. Yes, I smiled. Good. We chose a small diner halfway across town. Neutral ground. Not my house, not her temporary apartment. Somewhere new, somewhere honest. After the call ended, I sat alone in the kitchen. The setting sun painted golden light across the floor. Henry's photograph rested on the counter nearby. I looked at it and smiled. Not because everything was perfect. It wasn't. Not even close. But for the first time since Ashley moved in, I could see a path forward. Not a return to what we'd been. That was impossible. Too much had happened. But perhaps something better. A relationship built on truth instead of obligation. Respect instead of guilt. Boundaries instead of control. The road would be long. Healing always is. But at least we were finally walking in the right direction. And sometimes, after enough pain, that's more than enough. The diner sat on the edge of town beside an old gas station and a flower shop that had been there longer than I could remember. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't trendy. And that was exactly why I chose it. No memories attached. No emotional territory to defend. Just two women meeting at a table. A mother, a daughter. Trying to figure out whether a relationship could survive the damage they'd done to each other. I arrived 10 minutes early. Old habits. I ordered coffee and sat near the window. Outside, late autumn sunlight painted the parking lot gold. Inside, the smell of bacon and fresh pie drifted through the room. For a moment, I thought about turning around and leaving. Not because I hated Ashley. Because I was afraid. Forgiveness sounds beautiful when people talk about it. Living it is much harder. Forgiveness requires vulnerability, and vulnerability feels dangerous after betrayal. The bell above the diner door jingled. I looked up. Ashley had arrived. She came alone. No Derek, no explanations, no defenses. Just Ashley. For the first time in years, she looked like herself. Simple jeans, a sweater, no carefully curated image, no performance. Just a woman carrying the consequences of her choices. When she reached the table, she hesitated, then quietly asked, "May I sit down?" Such a small question, yet it nearly made me cry. Because for months, people had made decisions around me without asking. Now my daughter was asking permission to sit at my table. Respect. The thing we'd both nearly lost. Of course. She sat. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Then Ashley surprised me. She didn't begin with excuses. Didn't mention Derek. Didn't explain circumstances. Didn't blame stress. She simply looked at me and said, "I'm sorry." The words came out broken, raw, honest. Tears immediately filled her eyes. "I am so sorry." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. The little girl, the teenager, the woman, the mistakes, the pain, all of it. Then I nodded slowly. "I know." Ashley laughed weakly through tears. "No, I don't think you do." She wiped at her face. "Mom, I hear that sentence in my head every day." My heart tightened. What sentence? The answer came immediately. This isn't your family anymore. The words hung between us. Heavy, permanent. Ashley closed her eyes. I can't believe I said that. Neither could I. Not because it wasn't true in the moment, because it revealed how far she'd drifted from herself. She looked down at her hands. I think that's the part I hate most. What? I meant it. The honesty startled me. Ashley continued quietly. For a few seconds, I actually meant it. The admission hurt, but I appreciated the truth. more than another carefully crafted apology. She swallowed hard. I was angry. Another tear. I was scared. Another. I felt trapped. Then she looked up. But none of that excuses what I became. Silence settled between us. Not uncomfortable, just honest. Finally, I spoke. Ashley. She looked at me. I forgive you. The tears came immediately. Strong, uncontrolled, real. But before she could speak, I continued. That doesn't mean everything goes back to normal. She nodded instantly. I know. Forgiveness isn't the same thing as trust. More tears. I know. And forgiveness isn't permission. Ashley nodded again. I know. For the first time in months, I believed her. Because she wasn't arguing, wasn't negotiating, wasn't trying to speed up healing. She was accepting reality, and that mattered. A lot. We talked for nearly 3 hours. About everything. The house. Henry. Her childhood. The resentment she'd carried. The guilt I'd unknowingly created. The pressure she'd felt. The mistakes she'd made. Not every conversation was comfortable. Some were painful. Others heartbreaking. But all of them were real. At one point, Ashley quietly said, You know what I finally realized? What? She smiled sadly. Dad wasn't protecting the house. I frowned. What do you mean? He was protecting you. The realization hit me all over again. Henry had seen something neither of us wanted to see. The possibility that one day I might need protection from people I loved. Ashley stared out the window. For years I thought the house was an inheritance. She laughed softly. It wasn't. No. It was a shield. Exactly, a shield. Not against strangers. Against pressure. Against manipulation. Against guilt. Against the idea that motherhood required endless sacrifice. Eventually, the conversation shifted to Derek. I didn't force it. Ashley brought it up herself. We separated. The words landed quietly. No drama, no anger, just fact. I nodded. How are you feeling? She thought for a long moment. Sad. Another pause. Relieved. Another. Embarrassed. I understood all three. Ashley stirred her coffee. I kept trying to save him. The sentence felt familiar. Painfully familiar. Because I'd spent years trying to save Ashley. And before that, years trying to save everyone else. Women do that sometimes. We mistake love for responsibility. Then we carry burdens that were never ours. Ashley looked at me. I finally realized something. What? I can't fix someone who keeps lying. No, you can't. Neither can a mother, neither can a wife, neither can anyone. The lesson is brutal, but necessary. By the time we left the diner, the sun was setting. The sky glowed orange above the parking lot. For a moment, we stood beside our cars, neither wanting to end the day. Not because everything was repaired, because hope had returned. A fragile thing, but real. Ashley hugged me, not carefully, not politely, the way she used to. I hugged her back, and for the first time in a very long time, it felt like hugging my daughter, not a stranger. Weeks turned into months. Healing came slowly, as real healing always does. Ashley continued therapy. She found a financial counselor. She rebuilt her life one step at a time, not perfectly, but honestly. Noah remained close to both of us. In many ways, he became the bridge that helped reconnect our family. Every Sunday, he called. Every Sunday, without fail. Sometimes to ask advice. Sometimes to share good news. Sometimes just to hear my voice. And every call reminded me that kindness leaves deeper roots than manipulation ever can. As for the house, it stayed exactly where it belonged. With me. Not because I wanted control, because it represented something important. dignity, choice, independence, the right to decide my own future. Charles helped me update my estate plans. This time, everything was crystal clear. No assumptions, no confusion, no opportunities for manipulation, just truth and boundaries, healthy boundaries, the kind I should have protected sooner. One evening, nearly a year later, I sat on the front porch watching leaves drift across the yard. Henry's photograph rested on the table beside me. Inside the house felt peaceful. Not empty. Peaceful. My phone buzzed. A text from Ashley. "Love you, Mom." A moment later, another message appeared. "Thank you for not giving up on me." Tears filled my eyes. Not because everything had turned out perfectly. It hadn't. Life rarely does, but because healing had happened anyway. Slowly, painfully, honestly. I looked toward the maple tree Henry had loved so much. Then toward the house. Our house. The house everyone thought this story was about. The truth is, it never was. The house wasn't the lesson. The lesson was, this family isn't defined by who claims ownership. Family is defined by who shows respect. Love without respect becomes control. Sacrifice without boundaries becomes resentment. And forgiveness without wisdom becomes permission for the same hurt to happen again. I learned all three. The hard way. But I learned them. And as the evening sun faded across the porch, I realized something else. When Ashley screamed that I wasn't family anymore, she thought she was taking something from me. She wasn't, because family was never hers to grant or remove. Family is built through love, protected by respect, and strengthened by truth. The moment we finally faced the truth, we found our way back to each other. Not as we once were, but as something stronger, something honest, something worth saving. There are moments in life when the deepest wounds do not come from strangers. They come from the people we love most. Many parents spend their entire lives sacrificing for their children. They work longer hours, postpone dreams, carry financial burdens, and quietly endure hardships because they believe love means putting family first. But one of the hardest lessons we can learn is that love should never require us to surrender our dignity. Being a parent does not mean accepting disrespect. Being a mother does not mean becoming invisible. And being family does not give anyone permission to manipulate control or take advantage of another person's kindness. One lesson I learned is that boundaries are not walls. Boundaries are acts of self-respect. They protect relationships from becoming unhealthy. Without boundaries, love can slowly turn into obligation, resentment, and emotional debt. I also learned that forgiveness is powerful, but forgiveness is not the same as forgetting. True forgiveness allows healing to begin, while wisdom ensures the same mistakes are not repeated. You can forgive someone and still require accountability. You can love someone and still say no. Most importantly, never underestimate your own worth. Age does not make you less valuable. Widowhood does not make you weaker. Loneliness does not mean you should accept mistreatment. Every person deserves respect regardless of their age, finances, or circumstances. Sometimes standing up for yourself feels uncomfortable. Sometimes it disappoints people. But protecting your dignity is not selfish, it is necessary. And often, when we finally choose self-respect, we give others the opportunity to become better versions of themselves as well. If you were in Brooke's position, would you have forgiven Ashley? Or would you have walked away completely? Let me know in the comments. I genuinely want to hear your thoughts. And if this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these stories reach more people who may need them. Also, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. I love reading your comments and connecting with viewers from all around the world. Thank you for spending this time with me, and remember, your kindness matters, your voice matters, and your dignity matters too.